Welcome everyone. I call the October 20th, 2025 meeting of the Carver School Committee to order. If everyone could please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I do see it. It'll be on me soon, I'm sure. There's another stink bug, yeah. So, if you see me flinch, you know, I know there's a stink bug on the flag. I'll do my best to not jump.
Tom can't hear me.
Oh no, Tom can't hear us?
Nope.
I don't have an answer for that.
Me either.
Oh no.
Tom, can you hear us now?
Can you hear us now?
We can't hear him either. He's talking.
He can hear me, but he's not going to be able to hear us.
Okay.
Okay.
We're not going to hear him. So no. We can hear Tom. Tom, go ahead and speak.
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Now we can. Yes.
We'll be able to manage that for that part of public comment. Or for that part of Tom's comments, we'll be able to do that.
Okay. All right, so we are going to start this evening with some recognitions.
Yeah, so we're excited to have some of our students here this evening who scored exceeds expectations on last year's spring MCAS exam. We're actually going to break this up over 3 meetings because as a district we had 37 students score exceeds, which we're pretty excited about. And really, it's only a small number of students statewide and within our own district that score exceeds. Depending on the grade level, depending on the exam, it probably puts your score around the top 10%, if not higher, of all students in the state, which is just tremendous. So we think it's appropriate to take a few minutes to recognize those students who reach that standard of exceeds expectation on their MCAS exams at all grade levels. Really, it's ultimately it's a recognition of our students, their dedication to their own education, their dedication to valuing school and taking school seriously. Really the dedication of their teachers and their families that are supporting all along the way. No one reaches any achievement on their own. It's usually a group of all of us supporting someone together. Obviously, the person who has the most important part of that achievement is the student. But that student has a tremendous support network along the way. I see a few of our teachers here in the audience today, and I think they're here just because their students were students who achieved exceed. So obviously glad to see a lot of parents here because your role is absolutely vital in terms of your students' success. And we're glad to see our students here to receive this recognition. So with further ado, we'll recognize some students who achieved exceeds expectations. We have 12 students that we invited here tonight. We'll call them up. Give them their recognition, then we'll ask them to stand up here. We'll do a joint recognition, then we'll do some pictures. We always do some pictures with the school committee. So let's recognize our students who got exceeds expectations. Mr. Griffin's going to help me out. So Ellie Bellevue exceeds expectations in ELA. Blackwell exceeds expectations. You won't be along alone for me. Billy Brooks exceeds expectations on the science MCAS. William Karen exceeds expectations in the math MCAS. Not by grade. So we'll start with Reed Gordon exceeds expectations. Isaiah Dusso for exceeds expectations in math. Abigail Fardy for exceeds expectations in math. Daxton Fuller for exceeds expectations in math. Kendall Holmes for exceed expectations in ELA. Hubbard for exceeding expectations in math. Cassandra Jeffrey for exceeds expectations in math. And Brendan Kelly for exceeds expectations in math. And we have one more round of applause for all. Now, we want to do a picture? Younger guys in the front?
It's tradition, we're gonna do a picture.
Yep, to the west side, so all the people in the back. Put it in something. Put it like in the background.
Stay still for your
Parents.
parents.
Family. I think we did. Thank you very much.
See you guys next year with more friends.
My dress Dress is blanket. I'm like, how can I be appropriate? Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Congratulations to everyone on your amazing accomplishments. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Told you. All clear out.
You should announce at the beginning of the meeting that if you're here, you can't leave.
No. Charlie's driving my kid to dance.
It's because I'm trying to get
That
Tom to
was
work.
feedback trying to get Tom ready.
Yeah, I'm trying to
Oh,
get
yeah,
Tom ready.
Tom.
Okay. Next on our agenda are comments from the EAPC with the association president, Tom Pinto. Hope you can hear us, Tom.
You hear me? Yay!
Is everybody muted?
I am muted. Is everybody muted?
Is everybody muted? I'll see if we get less feedback. Go ahead, Tom.
All right, it's good to be heard. We're able to work this out. Congratulations to all the students before that. They did a great job, a lot of hard work. So here, I got my comments finally. Here we go. It's been a fast start to the school year. I actually can't believe we're almost through October. I don't really know where it went. The EAPC is still actively working on putting the contractually agreed committees to review the stipends and the graduate courses for movement on the salary schedule. We're also in the process of having some good open discussion with the other unions and the town regarding health insurance. So I think there's some work to be done, but some good conversations on the way. That's all I have for tonight. It's great to be heard. It's great to see everybody watching the meeting. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Tom.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Great to hear you. Okay, so that brings us to comments from the middle school ambassadors.
Yeah, so we're excited to have Maddie Eakins, Autumn Doyle, Haley Valera, and Taylor Whipple here to represent the middle school student ambassadors.
Excellent. Welcome.
Just give me a second to bring up the presentation. One. All right, we are ready to go.
Hi. Hi, my name is Taylor Whipple. I'm in 9th grade, and I became a student ambassador because I enjoy helping people.
Hi, my name is Hallie Valera. I'm in 7th grade, and I wanted to become a student ambassador because I love getting involved in helping out our school. Hi, my name is Maddie Aikens, and I'm in 6th grade, and I want to be a student ambassador because I want to get more involved in school.
Hi, my name is Autumn Doyle. I'm in 6th grade and I wanted to be a student ambassador to help out around the school.
This year, we all applied to be student ambassadors. We completed an application and attended a meeting to learn what it meant to be a student ambassador. At Carver Middle High School, a student ambassador is a student who represents their grade level by modeling the school's motto of being respectful, responsible, and the best you can be. An ambassador is defined by their leadership skills, good character, kindness, a willingness to help others, and a positive attitude. Becoming an ambassador is an opportunity to increase our involvement in the school's community, spread kindness to others, and model what it means to be a Carver Crusader.
As a student ambassador, we need to be responsible and keep up our grades. Have good behavior, good attendance, listen to morning announcements, and check our emails to make sure that we sign up for events. We have about 40 student ambassadors, so some of the events that we sign up for are on a first come, first served basis.
As a student ambassador, one of our main jobs is to make others feel welcome at our school. Some events we will help out with this year are attend monthly student ambassador meetings to learn different skills, open house, parent-teacher conferences, tour guide, peer helper for new students, pathway showcase night, guest speakers, department Pacific events, transition to middle school, and greeters.
Our advisors try to teach us useful skills at our monthly meetings. At our next meeting, we are going to work on having good communication skills. We will learn that it's important to be an active listener, have good body language, and show empathy and be clear and concise.
As we near the end of Term 1, here are some of the fun events that have taken place at our school so far. We have hosted an ice cream social for all of our new students. A handful of student ambassadors got to introduce themselves to the new students and share with them how they are involved in different activities and clubs in the school. The administrators and counselors were there too. We all got to make our own ice cream sundaes. The movie loft was fun after-school activity, and the 6th grade class got to go to Camp Burgess. All the middle schoolers are getting ready for the Halloween social, and there was also a trip to Sawchuck Farm, and the 6th graders will be participating in Diversity Day. Stay tuned for pictures and some of these events.
Last week, the students in grades 6 through 12 participated in Spirit Days. Some of the days were Pink Out, Soccer Moms versus Barbecue Dads, and Neon Day. The school had a lot of energy last week. Here are some pictures.
The 6th grade students attended the annual trip to Camp Burgess at the beginning of the month. We had a great time sleeping in cabins, spending time with friends, learning about animals and nature, and being away from home for a few days. More pictures from Camp Burgess. Students were able to zip line, fish, and spend time on the water. There are a lot of things to do at the camp.
This was the 6th grade field trip to Camp Burgess. Jackson Pimento won the camp raffle, so we got to ride into school on a fire truck.
This was an after-school field trip to Sawchuck Farm. The middle school students got to walk through the corn maze, go on a hayride, and participate in various fun hands-on activities. Here are some pictures of the middle school students who went on the trip.
We welcomed 22 new students to Carver Middle High School this year. We recently had an ice cream social where we talked with all of the new students and shared all of the great ways to get involved at Carver Middle High School.
7th and 8th grade students attended Fright Fest on Friday night at Six Flags Amusement Park. This event was organized by our middle school student council, advisors, and students. It was fun. It was a fun and scary night.
Thank you for inviting us to speak to you tonight. We will have a few other ambassadors next time tell you about all of the exciting things, upcoming events at our school.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, so next we have comments from the Captain's Council.
Yep, so we're excited to have Jake Holden, David Savastano, Luke Maloney, and Brooke Wedby here as the captains of our cross-country team to talk a little bit about what's been happening in athletics this fall.
Excellent, welcome.
The football team is now 2-3, recently falling short to Mashpee in a close game. Nolan Keneally had 4 catches for 92 yards and a touchdown. Colin Eakins had 7 catches for 154 yards and a touchdown. And Nathan Helms had 259 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns, along with 61 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns.
Volleyball is having a very strong season so far, coming out with 15 wins and only 2 losses. They have some big stats this year, starting with the aces. They have Emma Wall with 41, Maeve Zakaruski with 107 blocks and kills with 115. Riley Jenkins has 175 assists, and Grace Highland is leading in digs with 167. Our program has evolved from small and losing record to one of the top 3 teams in Division 4. They've also had great success in the Dig Pink campaign. The team has 3 ambassadors, Emma Wall, Reese Hokima, and Maddie Eaton. The next big event is Senior Night on October 22nd, where they will be celebrating Senior Captain Addison Null, Senior Captain Maeve Zakaruski, and Senior Riley Jenkins.
This month, the boys soccer team has had many exciting games, such as beating Rising Tide 5-0, Wareham 4-0. Goals are scored by Sam Freitas, Mitch Sawicki, Michael Shelwyn, Dylan Thomas, Ryan LaBelle, and Aaron Reed. The soccer team also tied an away game with Hull 0-0.
The field hockey team currently holds a record of 6-8. They are going to continue to put in the hard work and hopefully make it to the tournament. The team is currently sitting at 24 on the power rankings.
Golf currently has a 5-9 record. They have won 4 out of the last 5 matches. 4 athletes are going to the leagues next Tuesday.
Boys cross country has continued to succeed this fall season. The dual meet the record has risen to 6-1 with an undefeated record against teams in our Tobin division. Some individual standouts this year have been freshman Nathaniel Tyler and freshman Benjamin Eby. We look forward to competing in the league and states championship meets in the coming weeks.
For girls cross country, 7th grader Hazel Butterworth got first in our 2 home meets against Abington and Middleborough. Hazel has set a middle school 5K record of 21:49, and she also broke her own record against Norwell by 1 minute and 5 seconds. Hazel also won first place in the Bay State Invitational with a time of 21 minutes flat out of 118 runners. Hazel placed first in the Twilight Invitational with a time of 19:23. Hazel also won Runner of the Year in the South Shore League Patriot Ledger. Lila Daly has placed 40th in the Twilight Invitational with a time of 23:10. Brooke Wedby got 48th place in the Bay State Invitational. Brooke also placed 130th at the Twilight Invitational with a time at the Bay State Invitational with a time of 28:25.3, with Emma Clancy right behind her with a time of 28:25.8.
Thank you.
Yep,
Thank you very much for
you
the
can be
update.
excited about the cross-country teams. They've done what a great season both cross-country
great
teams have
season.
had.
Congratulations.
So congratulations to you. It's
Awesome.
been outstanding. And keep up the good work as you go into states.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to comments from the general public. If there's anyone here that's in the room with us that would like to speak, you're more than welcome to go to the table to speak. I'm not sure if there's anyone online that's in the chat that would like to be recognized to speak, but if you are, if you could please type in the chat or raise your hand so you can be recognized.
I don't see anybody in the chat.
Okay. So no movement in the room and no one online, so we're going to move forward to the approval of minutes. And we have a long list of minutes to approve. So I will just list them all. August 11th, 2025 School Committee Workshop, August 20th, 2025 Building Tours, August 25th, 2025 Athletic Policy Subcommittee, September 29th, 2025 Open Session Minutes, September 4th, 2025 Policy Subcommittee Minutes, September 25th, 2025 Policy Subcommittee Minutes, and October 2nd, 2025 Policy Subcommittee Meeting Minutes. So what we're doing this evening is we're starting a practice where our subcommittees don't always meet on a regular basis. So we are going to vote our subcommittee meeting minutes at our open session meeting and only have those that are on that subcommittee participate in that vote. So this is going to change how we do things a little bit, but it's so we can get the minutes posted and accessible to the public sooner. Do you want to start with the ones that we've done together?
The subcommittee ones? Yep.
Like, yeah.
Yep. Okay, I move that we approve the September 4th, 2025 Policy Subcommittee meeting minutes.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Callie and I are the ones that serve on policy, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move that we approve the September 25th, 2025 Policy Subcommittee meeting minutes.
Stephanie, the second should probably
Should
be
be
from
me?
you because
Okay.
you were the one who was present at the meeting.
Okay, so, so can we redo the first vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I move that we approve the
Thank you,
the September 4th, 2025 Policy Subcommittee minutes.
I second that motion. Is there any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye. I move that we approve the September 25th, 2025 Policy Subcommittee minutes.
Second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. I move that we approve the October 2nd, 2025 Policy Subcommittee minutes.
I second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that takes care of policy. And then we have one,
Building tour, Kelly wasn't at.
And
yes,
the
so I was going to
athletic-
do the athletic
athletic
policy
policy
committee.
subcommittee,
In
yeah.
the minutes, that she
So-
wasn't there in the.
I move we approve the minutes for the August 25th, 2005 Athletic Policy Subcommittee.
I second.
That needs to, yeah, sorry, it needs to come from me because it's our subcommittee
go
meeting
for it.
minutes and
Oh,
you
I
weren't
thought
there.
you were talking about the other thing. I'm so sorry.
No, not yet. Any further discussion? All those
Bill
in
Conway.
favor?
Aye.
Stephanie Clarity, aye. Okay, so now we have three. One was our school committee workshop, our
yes.
building tours, and our open session. Do you want to take them individually?
Yeah, might as well.
Okay.
I move that we approve the August 11th, 2025 School Committee Workshop meeting minutes.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Bill was not present for that,
I
so
will
he will
abstain.
abstain. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye. Building
Sorry.
tours.
Kelly
Yes.
wasn't there.
Nope,
I
so
I
it's,
lost my meeting agenda. Not very kind. So yes, building tours.
I move
I
to
know
Kelly-
approve the August 20th, 2025 building tour minutes.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and then that should bring us to our open session minutes on September 29th,
Okay.
2025.
I move that we approve the September 29th, 2025 open session minutes.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for getting all those cleaned up. So now they can all be posted on our website and accessible to our community. So next, that brings us to communications.
Yeah, so there are two communications I'd like to share with everybody this evening. The first is, just wanted to share that the athletic department has started to do what they're calling the Crusader Athletic Times. So I just figured I'd show it to the community. The first one was published on October 14th, just highlighting some of the things that are happening in athletics. So this is going to become a regular piece in terms of us continuing to increase our communication to the community about all things that are happening in the Carver Public Schools, specifically here in terms of athletics. So I just wanted to make the committee aware that Kelsey's going to start putting this out on a regular basis. I just wanted to share the first edition with the committee.
Is that going to be quarterly or monthly?
Monthly.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
I think it's great. It's fantastic.
And then the second communication, we're just pleased to announce that we received notification from DESE that we have received another Innovations Pathways Implementation and Support Grant. That is in the value of $13,500. It will be in Ron's financial presentation as well for give the committee the opportunity to vote to accept that grant. Actually, it's the last grant that Meredith wrote for us. So prior to Meredith leaving in June, she completed the Innovation Pathways Implementation and Support Grant. And so we'll be using those funds this year to support our Innovation Pathways programs. And we'll, as I said, we'll vote to accept it during the financial presentation from Ron.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to reports from the superintendent and personnel updates.
Since our last meeting, we've had some personnel movements. We've had new hires. Madison Mulkern is an ESP special education at the elementary school, and Ryan Screamer is an assistant coach for the football team at the middle high school. And we've had 2 resignations, Kelly Burgess as an ESP in special education at the elementary school, and Thomas Ekbaum as the assistant coach for football. So that's been our personnel movement since we last met.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is the Youth Risk Behavior Survey.
Yeah, so we're pleased to have May Hickey here with us, who is going to, may come on up, who's going to share the results from our Youth Risk Behavior Survey that we did last year with students in grades 6 through 12. It's a modified version of that survey. This is the second year we've completed it, so May is going to be able to do some comparisons of our responses over time. And this is, funded through our Drug-Free Communities grant, and May plays part of the role, along with the middle high school administration and Megan Quirk, our Drug-Free grant coordinator, in terms of the implementation of the survey. And May's going to share the results with us.
Yeah. Thank you. Welcome.
May, if you just hold on a half a second, I just want to bring it up on the, for our viewing audience at home.
No worries. I can also just do another quick introduction.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I am a prevention coordinator with High Point Prevention Services Department. And so the Prevention Services Department is the one that curated the modified Youth Risk Behavior Survey. So these questions, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey is a very, very long survey. So we have modified it to make it only just like a few questions, so we can really target and pinpoint what we want to focus on, and kids don't get lost in the survey, because once you start answering all these questions, you kind of lose them, and so we really want to make sure it's quick, efficient, and effective. So this presentation was created by our research partner, Kelly Research Associates. We've been working with them for many years. So as you can see, one of the things that we really want to try to work on and improve on is the numbers who answered the survey. So last year we did have, or 2023, 2024, we did have more responses. So we are working to get the increase in responses, just so we can have a more accurate data, because the bigger our pool is, the more accurate the data can be. Just wanted to point that out.
And can I touch on that for a second? So this survey was optional. Students weren't required to take it. There was an opt-out that was sent home to parents, so parents had the opportunity to opt out of the survey if they didn't want to participate. And then it was done during the WIN period. So it wasn't, students were given the opportunity to complete the survey at that time, but it wasn't necessarily someone standing over them and saying, okay, do this survey now. Because obviously if we look, especially at some of the older kids, 11th and 12th grade, our numbers are small, in comparison to the size of the class. So obviously that impacts the results a little bit in terms of the participation. So students had option in terms of whether they participated or not.
Thank you. So this is going to go grade by grade, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, so I'm kind of going to go over it quickly, but please stop me if you have any questions. So all students of all grades were basically asked the same questions. The middle schoolers were not asked some of the demographic questions related to sexuality. However, they were answered the same questions about substance use, peer pressure, and mental health. So we're not talking about all of the questions that were answered. These are specifically the substance use questions. So the first one we're looking at is the 30-day use of specifically 6th grade respondents. And so there was a slight increase in the alcohol category. And so that is something for us to be aware of. Now, prescription drugs, it was at a 4%. However, we don't feel like this is a true accurate representation, because we figure we've tried to reword this question many, many times in regards to prescription drugs, but a lot of the times the students misunderstand and they think it's like ibuprofen or Advil or something like that. So that can probably...
Especially our younger students are more
Yes.
tending
Yes.
to, yes, I had a prescription and I had to take that.
Yes. So that is probably the explanation for the 4% of the past 30-day use of that. But otherwise, there's 0 for all of the other substances. The next is perception of risk. So this question asks, how risky do you feel it would be to use these substances? And the thing that's kind of concerning is that there is a decrease in perception of risk. So we're going to want to continue to work to educate on why certain substances are risky. However, in the whole scheme of things, it is pretty much a very high risk perception. The lowest one is only 65%. So that's still saying that like a majority of youth still in 6th grade still believe that alcohol is a risky substance to use. Parental disapproval. So this is the youth's perception of how much a parent would disapprove of them using a substance. So this one actually experienced a slight increase from last year, which is really promising. And so it's we kind of use this to gauge the idea of how much we are educating the parents on substances and maybe how much conversation that the parents are having with their youth about substances. The next one is peer disapproval. So this we find might be a little bit more accurate because they're not answering questions about themselves and they might not be as intimidated to answer these how they truthfully feel. So peer disapproval for most categories actually experienced a slight decrease, which would probably we would want to work on by, again, education about the risks and the harms of different substances. Now this is the 7th grade analysis. So for all schools, we kind of see that there is an increase once you get up in the grades for substance use in the past 30 days. So student use of all substances listed experienced a decrease between the 2 school years, which is amazing to see. Again, we're probably going to look at the prescription drugs as mostly a misunderstanding. So 7th grade past 30-day use is excellent in my opinion. And we're really glad to see that. Perception of risk, there was also an increase in perception of risk. So last year, 6th graders, I think maybe they got more education, maybe there was more talks. I think like they got a lot of maybe more education. This is just my speculation.
Yep.
Between the difference between 6th grade answers and 7th grade answers, I think are pretty interesting. And the parental disapproval is also extremely high as well, with it all in the 90s. So there's probably like a lot of discussion, or if not, they're hearing education around substances. And peer disapproval for both vaping and using prescription drugs not prescribed by a doctor increased between the 2 school years, which was quite interesting. Drinking alcohol had the lowest peer disapproval rate. However, the disapproval rate is still 91%, so that is still extremely high, which is really good to see, along with nicotine pouches. 8th grade analysis, so there is a slight decrease in vaping, which is always good to see. Again, another decrease in marijuana use. And I forgot to mention before, we did not ask about nicotine pouches in the year 2023 to 2024, so that's why there's no comparison data. But nicotine pouches at a 2% is still very low, which is good to see. And for any of those who don't know, those are like the brands that you see. They're like Velo, On, Zyn, that you see in convenience stores or gas stations. And it's synthetic nicotine, so there's no tobacco product in it. There's like no tobacco in it. It's synthetic, man-made nicotine.
But it's still harmful.
Yes.
Damaging.
It's way more potent than other traditional nicotine products, and people put them between their gum and their cheek, and so it goes right to your brain, so it can be very, very intense, and a lot of times, first time people use it, like they throw up. You can easily overconsume nicotine with or nicotine pouches. Again, so for perception of risk, there was a decrease for most categories in between the 2 school years. So again, we're going to want to continue to have these important discussions about education and the potential of harm for their developing brain. And then peer disapproval rates were still, again, very high. So parents are making their messages clear to their students or to their kids. For peer disapproval, there was actually a slight increase, which is excellent to see. And so we always want to continue also having students talk to each other about it, because sometimes, as we all know, they all listen to each other more than they listen to adults. So having what your friends think about you truly does matter sometimes. So now we're moving on to 9th grade. So this, we kind of see more substance use at an increase than the other grades before. I do want to point out that this is a transition year, so a lot of times it can be very stressful for students to have, even though it's in the same building, there's more pressure. So that might be why these numbers start to spike up around the years. When we did our whole regional data, we saw that there was a decent spike between the transition years and also when students got into 11th grade as well. So we had vaping increase from 4% to 6%, and same with marijuana as well. And alcohol jumped from 1% to 3%. For perception of risk, there was a decrease in perception of risk between the 2 school years. So again, that is just something for us to note. So drinking alcohol decreased from 70% to 65%, and then marijuana decreased from 73% to 69%. And then nicotine pouches are at a 58%. We're going to be really interested to see how the numbers for this year turn out once we get more information about nicotine pouches. Again, however, parental disapproval is still very, very high, with marijuana being about 90%. It did decrease slightly, but it's still very, very high for disapproval. And then for peer disapproval, there was a slight increase between the 2 years for peer disapproval, which we do like to see, as I've already mentioned. So alcohol went from 80% to 82%, vaping went from 81% to 85%, and marijuana went from 84 to 86%. 10th grade is the one that we really want to pay attention to, so these will be our 11th graders now. There was a significant increase between 2023 and 2024. So the largest increases were found in the alcohol categories from 2% to 12%. And then vaping doubled from 6% to 12%, and same with marijuana, 6% to 12%. And this is just a bit concerning, not only due to the jumps, but also because in all grades there was a lower amount of people who responded to the survey. So even though there was a lower amount, there was still a higher reported usage. So that's definitely something we want to look out for and make sure we are supporting our now 11th graders as much as possible. We also wanted to point out that these 10th graders, they did have an increased perception of risk about substances, so it's really interesting to see that they acknowledge that there is there is risk when using substances. However, these students are using substances anyway, so we kind of really want to get to the bottom of why are they using substances, what kind of supports we can help implement to really have them hopefully not turn to substances if they are struggling. So for parental disapproval, there was an increase, which is always positive. The lowest parental disapproval rate would be, I think, marijuana, but then that increased from 75% from 90 to 90%, which is huge. Again, there was also an increase in peer disapproval for the 10th graders as well. So going on to 11th grade, there was the substance use in the past 30 days either increased or remained stable. So alcohol increased from 8% to 13%, vaping 9 to 10%. However, marijuana did decrease from 14% to 10%. For perception of risk, most categories increased, which was really good to see. So they are getting some education, and we do again always want to see and let them know that it can impact their developing brain. For parental disapproval, it was again very high. There was a slight decrease in vaping, which is a little concerning, so we want to continue to be able to educate parents and meet them where they're at, and discuss the substances of first use especially, so nicotine, marijuana, and alcohol. And peer disapproval for most categories decreased between the 2 school years, with the lowest being marijuana. So again, we're probably going to want to target some education about how THC can impact the function of your brain and the risks that underage marijuana use can cause. And lastly, for the 12th graders, so students past 30-day use increased between the 2 school years. So alcohol increased from 6% to 14%, vaping increased from 16% to 29%, and marijuana increased, marijuana decreased from 23% to 8%. So we are happy to see that there is a decrease. However, again, I wanted to point out that I believe at the beginning of the presentation, it was only about 22 students overall who took the survey. So 29% is pretty high when having such a small pool. So again, something that we'd want to look at. And again, 9% for nicotine pouches is also concerning as well, as they are very discreet and can be hidden, and they are very potent. Again, we see the increase of perception of risk for things like prescription drugs. However, other than that, the other substances, there's actually a decrease in the perception of risk, which again is something that we want to really pay attention to and really work to make sure that we are continually having conversations. Parental disapproval, it's a bit lower than the other grades. However, it did increase for vaping and marijuana, so it increased from 81% to 86%, and marijuana it increased from 68% to 73%. And then lastly, for peer disapproval, they actually increased rather significantly between the 2 school years. So for alcohol, it increased from 45% to 77%, 61% to 77%. For cigarettes, vaping would be 40% to 68%. And marijuana, this one's huge, I thought 26%, it jumped to 64%. That was a lot of data. That was a lot of numbers. But overall, the importance of continuing to do this survey is just so we can continue to have trend data and make sure that all of our initiatives going forward and support are evidence-based and informed by what the students are telling us they need.
I have something, if you don't mind. I was just curious because it kind of came out. The 7th grade going into 8th grade, so the first year it was 7th going to the 8th grade, they had a high number of participation. Was it due to the size of the class, or was there something in that class that's getting them to do the survey more than the rest? Just as to put that question to be put out there.
For 23-24?
Excuse me?
For 23-24 or the 8th grade for 24-25?
The 23-24, they were 7th grade, and then going into 8th grade, they also had a high number of, see, look at that, 120 and 114.
That's our largest class.
Those are the largest class.
So that is the that is but it's still a higher percentage. So that class last year was 132, I think, 130 something, 132, Christine? 8th grade graduation? So they were 132, but that's still a high percentage of 132. The 7th grade class is smaller, but they're more around 100, but that's still only 66% of them did it where. So I don't know if there's a particular reason why that cohort had a strong, by far, that cohort had the strongest overall percentage of students participating. The 8th grade actually wasn't bad, because 8th to 9th, remember, we would always lose students for Toll Colony. So they had a fairly strong turnout as well, pretty consistently. But I don't have a good answer for why that particular cohort had a high response rate. But yes, they are the largest class.
Anyone have any questions? Thank you very much for coming to present, and thank you for all the work that you do.
Of course. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I just also wanted to point out that we will be adding a few more questions this year, at least 3, in terms of problem gambling. We have gotten another new grant for the Prevention Services Department called the Project Vote Up Grant, and we are going to be asking students about some behaviors related to problem gambling, and I can send you a whole information about the importance of asking early and doing early prevention on that as well.
And one thing we, as the admin team, has been thinking about is whether the appropriateness of the survey for the middle school students. Obviously the middle school students, especially 6th and 7th grade, had a pretty consistent, no. And on one side, it's like, well, I don't think it hurts to ask the question and have everyone say no. But we've had some concerns that maybe it's not age appropriate for that grade level in 6th and 7th grade. So it's just something we're looking at and considering. And in terms of the problem gambling, I think that's an interesting one, especially for our older kids, our juniors and seniors, because it's the reality of the access to online gambling. I know you have to be 21, I believe, to participate in that, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. I don't know how well their controls are in terms of some of those websites, in terms of all the online gambling that's now available within the state. So I think that's an interesting question just to gather some data on. And obviously it gives us trend data over time that the Carver Cares group can look at, that the middle high school admin can look at, in terms of making sure we're providing the appropriate supports for students and families around the issues of substance use and prevention and abuse.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, mate.
Okay, so next that brings us to the Carver Middle High School Athletic Banner Project.
Kelsey, come on up. Kelsey has a banner for us.
Excellent.
I need assistance in displaying the banner. And while her and Ron get ready to participate, showing the banner, this is a follow-up to Kelsey's presentation at the last meeting about banners. At the end of last year, Kelsey put together a team of administrators, coaches, former coaches, and athletic boosters to consider redesigning and updating our athletic boosters. And there's an example of our redesigned athletic banner, what it would look like.
Beautiful.
Boys cross country, they were here. We could have showed them their banner. And it sounds like they're going to be adding another sticker.
This is their 2025 sticker.
Oh, nice.
Awesome.
So I can show you kind of what the process.
Yeah, because I think there were some questions about the stickers and how the stickers work.
Yeah.
So here's the 2025 sticker that they mailed to us, that we will align and put on and add.
Awesome.
Very cool.
And we had some feedback on the stickers that they were really.
The company we went to, they said that since they've been doing this for years, they've never had somebody call or anybody say that one has fallen off. They did guarantee me that however many years, if we have one, they will 100% guarantee us a brand new one and send it back.
Yeah.
If that does happen, but they've never had a company or a school say that numbers or anything is on stick. These are both for indoor and outdoors, so it is meant for all different kinds of weather, but ours are obviously going to be indoors.
And in terms of the project itself, it's been on the weekly news. It's been on the website. So we've been trying to put out information out to the community that this was happening. That's why we purposely did this over 2 school committee meetings, to give people the opportunity to give us feedback. And I'll be honest, I haven't heard no one's reached out to me on this issue. And Kelsey says no one's reached out to her. Well, since Christine's standing up there, we'll ask her if anybody's reached out to her about the banner project. So at this point, we haven't received a lot of feedback. And at this point, the administration is in support of moving forward and doing these banners. I don't know. I feel bad making you stand there, so you can curl it back up and and then we can talk a little bit more about banners.
Okay. Thank you for the show and tell.
I like it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, so, yeah, so, obviously I, defer to the will of the committee. It wasn't our intention this evening to go through all the banners again. I have the presentation if you'd like us to do that. It's available, but at this point, I guess I'll just summarize again what was the reasoning behind this. There were really four main reasons that we looked at this. One was to create consistency in the look of the banners. One was to create consistency on what gets recognition as a banner, because we said that right now there have been some inconsistencies. There was a concern that several sports were looking to add individual accomplishment banners, since some sports currently have them and some sports don't.
Yep.
So there became this kind of discussion of, well, we'd like to have this banner for our individual sports recognition. And we addressed that through the plaques that we've decided to do. And the reality is some of the banners could just benefit from an upgrade in terms of look and overall, consistency of the look of the banner project. So at this point, the administration supports this, though I do think it would be important for the school committee on this issue to take a vote and support the project. At this time, the cost, the quote we have on the project is $17,466. We did discuss last time about a video board. So our initial investigations found out that the video board company we were looking at has a yearly subscription of $4,900. We thought that was high. That's beyond buying the board, installing it. Then there was a yearly subscription for the software. So we said, we're going to start trying to look at some other options and see if we can do it in a different way. So we're still interested in that concept, but it's not necessarily looking for the school committee to take a vote to put the board up at this time.
Okay. Thank you for that.
I don't know if you have questions for Kelsey or
Does
for
anyone
me or
have
for
any
Ron or.
questions?
Great job.
Nope.
That looks great.
Yeah.
Love it.
Can't wait to see it all. It's going to look great.
Scott, did you say that the individual achievements are going to be put on a plaque?
Yes, so everything that's currently up there as an individual achievement.
Carver individual
achievement will become a plaque. So
Rather
that this,
than like a state
well, say if you,
or a national
if you,
champion.
right, if you want to stay, if you as an individual, because some sports you can win an individual state championship.
Sure, okay.
That's going to stay up as a banner.
Oh, that's a banner, okay.
Right. If you're 1,000 points, that's going to become a plaque. If you're 100 wins, if you're 100 goals, if you're 1,000 yards rushing, that's going to become a plaque.
And that's
because that we were viewing that as an individual sports accomplishment versus if you play tennis and you win the state championship in tennis, that would be a banner.
Okay. That's that wall we were talking about.
No, they'll be up. They'll be
by the, yeah.
the plaques. Yes, the plaques will go up on that. The goal right now, the plan is to put those plaques where the wall is next to nurse
It
office.
hasn't changed. It's basically what we talked about before.
Yep, exactly, yeah. Actually, we're not proposing anything different this evening than we did at the original presentation 3 weeks ago.
Okay, great. Thank you. Does anyone have any additional questions? Okay.
I move to approve the redesign of the athletic banners and the addition of plaques recognizing the students' individual sports accomplishments at the middle high school.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, Kelsey.
All right, Kelsey, thank you for all your work on this.
Project.
Good job.
Yay. Can't wait to see it all put
I
together.
can't wait to see it either.
Thank you very
Beautiful.
much. Okay, so that brings us to the MCAS score review.
All right, so John's going to take us through that presentation. John, just give me a second to bring that up.
Sure.
Patty's MCAS for
Lots of data tonight.
Yeah, it's a lot of data, a lot of information at tonight's meeting.
So as Scott brings this up, just a reminder, especially folks at home, when it comes to MCAS, it's really meant as an objective evaluation of kids' progress against state learning standards so that we can inform our instruction, look at how we can help individual students and groups of students. The whole system's really built on growth and not perfection, but improvement. So if you don't mind, Scott, I'll just say slide. But
I'm generally pretty good at
you should
paying
do that,
attention.
yeah. So big picture we'll talk about tonight. First of all, just kind of set context, what's going on in Massachusetts for MCAS, and then we'll talk about Carver's achievement and growth. We'll look at how we did relative to other districts, and kind of talk about the effects of attendance, which is important to keep in mind. And then lastly, what are the next steps? After looking at the data, what actions are we taking? So as far as the state challenges, the context, Last week, Commissioner Dr. Martinez for DESE for the state spoke in, he was in Boston, and one of the things he presented was this data, which I thought was really interesting, that statewide, when we look at ELA results for 10th grade, if you put meeting and exceeding together as a percentage, how we did last year showed not just a decline from the year before, but actually a tremendous decline from pre-COVID. And it's kind of an interesting piece that we're not there for achievement. We're still trying to figure out how to teach kids today, and the strategies that might have been successful and effective 7, 8, 9 years ago, they aren't working. Like, the world's changed and our kids have changed. So as we look at Carver, it's just important to remember this is affecting everybody, and these are the ELA results, which in that red box shows a drop. And then if you look at the next slide, math actually shows even a greater drop for all kinds of kids. And this is the average for the state. So, it's an average, so I'm sure, some districts showed some improvement, but an awful lot of districts are still struggling to regain the levels of achievement that they were at before. And Carver's no different than a lot of other districts. So when we look at our achievement, these stacked bar graphs show 100% of the kids in each grade. Each color is a proficiency level, and they range from dark blue at the very top, which is the percentage of kids exceeding the expectations for their grade level, down to kids that are not meeting. As we go through these slides, there are a couple things I'll point out, and I included them as key takeaways, especially for anybody watching this from home or afterwards. But I think it's really important to note the 10th grade ELA performance was very strong. Half of our kids met or exceeded expectations. And this was the first year where kids knew that it wasn't going to determine their competency determination for graduation, yet they did have the skills that they still were able to meet and exceed expectations in good numbers. And then I know when one looks at the graph, the partially meeting, the yellow, is prominent. In fact, almost half of our kids in ELA end up in that band, but I dug in a little bit more, and within that, 2 out of 5 kids, 40% of kids, were within just a couple questions of moving in a meeting. They were right at the top. They're not evenly dispersed throughout partially. Most kids, like 40% of them in ELA, are clustered. 10 points is 2 questions. It's maybe a couple extra sentences on an essay. It's right there. So, as we look at it, it's not like our kids are nowhere close to meeting or exceeding. Actually, big numbers, I think, are. And then as we move to math, it's sort of a similar story. I think we have a lot of kids, once again, on the cusp of passing. And it's 43% of math kids are right there. But I think it's also important to take a step back and look at for math, grade 3 through 5, and really the success and the high levels that those kids demonstrated for proficiency. Grade 4 had the highest percentage of kids, 48%, in meeting or exceeding, which really, it's nice that kids at that age, they'll move that, they'll continue that level of achievement, hopefully, as they move forward. But especially in math, as we look at this data this year, it's very encouraging. We look at science, and I'm sorry, some of the bars go from skinny to fat to skinny again. It should be noted for the high levels of achievement for meeting, it's pretty stable across the 3 grades that take science. 5th, 8th, and 9th in Carver, as kids take the MCAS for physics. Really, really tough MCAS. But there is a fair amount of stability, and once again, 44% of the kids in partially meeting are really within a question or two, about 10 points of that meeting expectation. So it's the same story across, and when we get to the spring, we'll remind parents that sometimes, you get to bed or breakfast or getting to school on time and a positive attitude, that can make the difference for a couple questions. So we'll have, I would think that we'll be able to help those kids get over the cusp. And then civics, this is the first year where the civics data was reported. Our 8th graders take civics based on the curriculum. It's a really interesting test. It's tests a lot of literacy. There's a lot of writing. And there's a performance task that's very similar to what kids do in AP US history, that kind of analysis of primary source documents and then writing on that. It's a very high level of social studies, critical thinking, and writing. And Carver did very well. They had fewer kids than on average with the state not meeting. But most of our kids were in pretty good shape, either partially or meeting. And once again, for the teachers teaching it, this was brand new. This is the second year. They gave it in the first year it was reported. So we've got a great curriculum in 8th grade, so I think they're going to continue and probably help kids achieve at higher levels in the future.
John, I just wanted to ask a mark on this at this point. So I do want to just let people know, make people aware that in 8th grade in particular last year, we had a high number of students who opted to not take the exam. So we say there is an opt-out, students have to take the exam. We don't require students to take the exam. And the 8th grade is challenging. The reality is they have to take 4 exams. They have to take 8 days of testing. So as the testing sessions went on, the number of students not participating grew. So we had the lowest number in English and ELA, which was first, and the highest number at the end in civics. And it varied from, but it was anywhere, depending on the test, between 24 and 36 students who did not participate. Now, their scores are not reflected in here, so it's not like they count as a 0. They're just not reflected in the overall scores. But looking at that population, seeing the students who didn't take the exam, it was some of our stronger students. So I do think that our scores in 8th grade would look better if the entire 8th grade participated. And we did not have that issue at other grade levels. In general, across the board, we had pretty typical participation for our other grade levels. But in 8th grade in particular, there was a movement to not participate in the exam. So I do think that it skews the data for 8th grade a little bit.
And we still, I will talk more about it in accountability. We still are, kids are expected to take it. And once again, it gives us the opportunity to really make some instructional decisions based on where our kids are. And when you're missing huge swaths of kids, you don't know if there's interventions or support that's needed. You can't tell is the curriculum working. So as Scott said, in the future, we want to do right by kids and help them get as far as we can. And it's important for them to, try MCAS and give us a sense of where they are as far as mastering the state learning standards.
So to be clear, it only helps the student to take this test, not harm them, even if they don't do so well.
Yeah, students aren't kept back. It just gives us the opportunity to really support our kids. Yep.
Question, John.
Yeah.
Do you feel that the timing of this test has some impact, only for the fact that, again, personal experience, this year the MCAS for the 6th grade I think was like September 12th. They had just gone back to school.
No.
For the timing or
You're talking about you might be thinking about NWA.
Oh, okay, so when?
The MCAS in the spring, it's all in spring.
Oh, it's all in spring, okay, never mind, I'm messing them up.
Yeah, you're thinking about the NWA. The NWA was given right when they went back to school.
Right when they went back to school.
But that gives like the beginning, so you see, you do a fall, winter,
Okay.
spring, and you see that growth over the school year.
Okay.
Yeah, and it gives us a chance to help kids, continue to master those skills or address any deficiencies, and then by the end of the year with MCAS, hopefully you see that growth, completed. So as we look at the meeting and exceeding, how do we do versus the state, relative. As we look at ELA, and once again the grades are at the bottom. Red is Carver, blue, I'll call it maroon, cranberry is Carver, and blue is Massachusetts. The numbers, once again, represent the percentage. If you combine the percentage of kids who scored either meeting or exceeding, I produced that number. It should be noted that most of the grades have actually very narrow gaps, and they're very close to the state. And the small gaps certainly in the early grades, 3rd and 4th, and then our middle school ELA as well. So you're seeing places where there's early interventions and foundational instruction really are on par with the state average. And then when we go to the math, once again, elementary, the real solid development, and you've got several grades that are almost at the same level or above the state. And once again, it's a really positive indicator that the math instruction interventions that are being done, they're effective, and they're really building a base of proficiency around math with our students. The closeness to the state, as you see, goes all the way into middle school. And as Scott said, the 8th grade grades relative to the state are just, the data is really questionable this year. Science, once again, it's only given three years. Real solid performance in 8th grade, and really competitive with the state average. So it's real strong preparation for high school science coursework. And once again, that 9th grade MCAS, the physics is a really challenging test.
It's always important to point out for high school that we give the physics MCAS in 9th grade. The most common MCAS is the biology MCAS, which some schools give in 9th grade, some schools give in 10th. So this isn't always an apples to apples comparison, because the larger majority, the most commonly given exam is biology. And it's a much smaller percentage of schools that give physics as their high school MCAS exam.
Yeah, so, and this gets reported as high school as opposed to grade.
Yeah, they don't compare. Yeah. I always actually wondered that, why the state doesn't show, this is what the physics kids did, this is what the biology kids did, this is what the chemistry kids did, but that's not how they report it. They report it by the end of 10th grade, what exam have you taken.
Yeah. And you see that difference even with the AP scores that we talked about earlier, that the AP Bio, for instance, kids tend to have a higher degree of success than the AP Physics. And that's national. So physics, especially with the reliance on math, the integration of math, it's a challenging science. But it's good that we go for the hard stuff. When it comes to the achievement trends over the last couple of years, this is post-COVID. These are really kind of busy, colorful slides. It's like a circus exploded on a bar graph, but really if you look at each grade, and each vertical group is a grade, and the one to the left is 2022, and the one to the right, the redder color, is last year. You see an awful lot of grades that started, that finished higher than they started. So they're positive trends. So 6th and 7th grade since COVID, really making some nice growth, especially with a new curriculum implementation. And then the lower elementary ELA, they've generated real positive trends. So as we look at post-COVID, we see a lot of improvement. And once again, that's the name of the game with MCAS. It's not perfection, it's continued improvement each year. All right, and I'm going to skip over to math, which is, I think, a similar story, especially the transitional grades 5 and 6. A lot of the grades showed real nice improvement, but 5 and 6 really showed that the new instruction, bridges in 5th grade, illustrative math in 6th, the teachers are ostensibly doing a really nice job as they continue to work with those curricula and really helping students achieve some nice growth year to year. And then with science, 5th and 8th really maintain solid achievement. They're achieving at a high level. And the next section is growth. So we're going to look at growth a couple different ways. And growth, once again, and I'll say it for parents that might not be familiar with it, but growth, what they do is they look at how a student did one year, and then the following time the student was tested, they compare that student against all the kids that had the same score on the previous test. So versus that cohort that scored the same way on the prior test, Did that student grow? Did they grow by how much? Did they decline? So growth is really important. And in this case, ELA and math, the amount of the average growth was really solid. Math, we're above the state average, which is always 50%, about 50% in math for 3 out of the 5 grades. And secondary ELA showed really nice momentum, continuing to improve and help kids grow. Once again, it's not necessarily achievement, it's how much you improve each year, and where you end up is the critical piece. Another look at growth is by subgroup. And I didn't really give a key, which maybe I should have, a legend. EL is our English learners, and this would be our English learners or our recent English learners. SWD is students with disabilities, students on IEPs. And then students who are low income is a third group. These are DESE designations for kids or for families. High needs just is a total of the prior 3. And then lastly, all students. So if you look at 3 through 8, elementary and middle school, in ELA, there was a really nice amount of growth, very relative to the state, for our EL students and our students with disability. So it's a real strong sign that the instructional supports for both groups, our EL teachers and our special education teachers, are really doing a nice job helping those students develop in those grade levels. For ELA, for 10th grade, for the same groups, it's the same thing. We're seeing students demonstrate a real high level of growth compared to the average 10th grade Massachusetts student, regardless of which subgroup it is. And I encourage, there are lots of kudos to be handed out, but I think our EL and our special ed departments really deserve a lot of kudos to see when we look at growth for the subgroups of students that they work with. Math in the elementary and middle school, same thing, that our elementary math growth really outpaces the state, and all kids demonstrated a high level of growth compared to the average elementary and middle school student in those subgroups. And in math, our grade 10 English learners grew at a substantially higher level than their state peers. So it's really impressive that, once again, the high school 10th grade math MCAS taken by students who are learning English in Carver, it just grew tremendously from 8th to 10th, as opposed to the average student around the state. So once again, those teachers are doing just a fabulous job. I know one of the things, I think every district likes to look at their neighbors. I don't know, I didn't dig into, for instance, what's going on in other districts, what sorts of things are happening. So I didn't really add key takeaways, but I think it is worth pointing out that, and this actually shows the meeting and exceeding the percentage added together. Even though Carver is one in from the left, ostensibly second lowest, all the towns are really bunched in closely. There's not, Carver for ELA grades 3 through 8, that's probably upwards of about 30 or 33%. The highest on, is Pembroke without surpassing the state, and they're only at 40. So it looks like we're way behind, but we're right there with our neighbors. When we go to 10th grade, we're rated sort of in the middle of the pack. But once again, not far off from the state, and right there with most of our neighbors. Our ELA math MCAS, I should say, in grades 3 through 8, same thing, we're really right in the middle of the pack. We've looked at elementary and middle school math several different ways tonight, and it puts us right where our bigger and smaller neighbors or comparable districts are. And then the 10th grade math, it is what it is. And then science, once again, that physics. I don't know, it would be interesting to look at with the neighboring towns which MCAS those kids take. But, analysis of attendance. Just by way of sort of defining the terms we're using, we're looking at chronic absenteeism. It's a percentage of kids missing 10% or more of their days of membership. Days of membership just means that if a student was there for the whole year, it's 10% of 180 days, or 18 days. After 18 days, you're chronically absent. If you move in halfway through the year and you're here for 90 days of school, then that's 9. Chronic absentee rate includes both excused and unexcused, and it gets reported out. You'll notice in the following graphs, it gets reported for grades 1 through 12 because students are mandated to go to school in kindergarten, but they divide at grades 1 through 8 and then 9 through 12. So just some sort of, just so you know, we're looking at for the last couple of years, right after COVID, the rates of chronic absenteeism in grades 3 through 8 was high, just like the high school. Brought down last year, it went up again. And when we look at what is the effect of that, having more kids chronically absent, more kids missing school, if we go to the next.
If I can just put a mark on this one.
Yeah.
So I know this is something we've talked about each year for the last, since return from COVID. And, the bottom line is the chronic absenteeism is still too high. And we're disappointed that it went up last year. So we had been making significant strides in that at both 3 through 8 and at the high school level. And I know we all marvel's the right word. We were amazed that, back in 2022, that a third, 33% of high school students were chronically absent. Because if you really look at the pre-COVID numbers, it generally fell between 5 and 8%. The elementary school level was more around 4 or 5, and the middle high school level was more around 8 or 9. And, so it's still too high. And I think the admin teams in both buildings have put a significant focus on chronic absenteeism. We spent a lot of time on that last year, reporting out what we had done the year before to get those numbers down to 10.6 and 15.4. The admin team was disappointed in both buildings to see that the number went up. And, so they're going to refocus those efforts back on trying to get that number down. But I think there's a lot of factors there that are difficult for us to control. And so I just think we just have to continue to send that messaging that having 14% of our elementary students miss more than 18 days of school that's an impact. That's a huge impact on their ability to be successful. And same thing at the middle high school, to have it be 17%. We want to see those numbers, we want to work. And I think some of the factors here are environmental. I think some of the factors are, I think there's definitely more of a messaging of if you're sick, stay home. I think which obviously was a huge message that came out of COVID. I also think that there's there's still a little bit of that residual, sorry, I just got a massive cramp. I gotta stand up.
Eat a banana tonight.
You gotta have I haven't eaten much today.
Fill your water
I
cup.
haven't eaten good stuff today, is what I'll say. I've eaten snacks along the way that I've run into. Sorry, I gotta go get a cup of water. But we have to work and get these numbers down, and we're going to talk about the impact on that. And as John goes into the slide, but as I said, I feel like some of it's environmental and some of there's a little bit of that we see more families saying, I'm going to take that day. And, that's a concern. I think we have to redouble our efforts to say students need to be in school. That's a huge factor in terms of students being able to be successful. All right, I'll get off my soapbox.
That's a
John,
great
on that
point.
issue.
I've always said that, teachers can't teach an empty seat. And throughout my career, I've had parents at every grade ask me, what can I do to help my student do better? When it comes to this is one thing you can do. Just help them get to school as often and really minimize those days out as possible. So when we look at chronic absenteeism, if you've missed 18 or more days, there's a 40% chance that you're going to score as partially or not meeting on MCAS. Once again, MCAS, I don't know if it's the end-all be-all, but it's a measure of how you're learning. At what point mastering the state learning standards for your grade are you? And a lot of kids are not meeting or only partially meeting who miss a lot of school. And when I looked at it, ELA and math were both exactly the same. 80% of the kids who are chronically absent are in not meeting or partially meeting. And it's kind of commonsensical, and it's not surprising when you really think about it.
I think that would go a long way in terms of improving our scores. And certainly that's not the only thing. You know, there's multiple factors that are reflective in the scores that we have as a district. But I think that the chronic absenteeism piece would be something that we need to, keep that focus on and trying to encourage students to be in school on a regular basis.
Yep. So after looking at all that data in lots of different ways, different kinds of data, what are the next steps? Carver Elementary School, one of their focus areas for this year is around student writing. They still are working on all the great things they're doing and continuing all the great programming, but this year there's a real double down around student writing. And if we click again, there's the Writers Workshop instructional model that's being implemented for second year in grades K2. And once again, when you implement a new curriculum, you're learning something brand new. So, the teachers are learning how to use these strategies. It takes a couple of years to really master them. So we're in year 2 for K2, and this is grade 3 through 5's first year. It provides, the model really focuses on providing focused feedback, like writers' conferences, like one-on-one conferences with the teachers, and really helping kids develop fluency, the ability to write a lot and effortlessly. And then to build that, if you click again, we're looking at writing across the curriculum, having other teachers besides teachers of literacy join the efforts to help kids develop that fluency, that ability to write. And if we
certainly, we want to make students strong writers, because it's just a benefit in doing that, certainly. But I do think that, and when you get into a deeper dive of the MCAS scores, writing was a concern, and I think moving those students from partially meeting to meeting, improving their writing is going to help them make that jump. And the students from meeting to exceeding, and so that we have more than I think 37 or 38 students we're going to recognize for exceeding. So next year that it's 50 students, I think that's going to come from that writing, that focus on writing.
Yep. So the rationale for this focus, if you click on one more, is when we looked at the ELA MCAS scores at the elementary school, if you broke them out, if there were any kinds of questions that were on reading comprehension, we were right at the state level, if not above it. When it came to looking at the writing tasks, we were between 6 and 14% lower than the state. Any struggles that we had with ELA in achievement relative to the state, when you looked at it, the difference was the student writing. So as a faculty, Principal Maestas has already spent time working with our faculty, analyzing the student writing that we're able to get back, and really looking at how to help kids up and over that hump and really get better at a skill that's going to help them throughout their academic careers and throughout the rest of their lives. Because writing is sort of, it's one manifestation of like critical thinking and communication. So that's one of the focuses. The other focus is around math curriculum, especially around deeper learning. The math folks are really using some of the data tools, like this year, the Open Architects Data Dashboard aligns lots of different data points, well beyond MCAS, but some of the benchmarks that come out, the unit assessments, and that come out of the Bridges curriculum to really be able to target how they help kids, focus on certain skills, be able to really give them a chance to work more and really strengthen their math skills. They're also looking at writing opportunities as well, so that during a lesson, if a student is being asked to, like if they're given, let's say a rectangle, and instead of the old days where it would be one size 3, one size 4, what's the area, and kids simply multiply it, they might be told the area is 24. What could the sides possibly be? But that might be something they first communicate in writing, and they kind of have to put their thinking down. So it really helps with and if you click on it, Scott, the rationale, it really helps with their conceptual understanding of the math they're learning, and really the faculty and administration, they're really committed to continuing that positive trend in math as kids learn using the Bridges curriculum. So those are the steps at the elementary, middle, high school. There's a focus, once again, beyond all the greater things. Nobody's dropped anything. But the focus on deeper learning, which is really, it's a lens to look at one's own instruction and pedagogy that really focuses on, am I doing everything I can as a teacher to make sure my kids critically think, that they problem solve, do they have opportunities to communicate and collaborate, and really importantly, are they developing a voice within the learning, both to articulate what they're learning, but also to shape their own learning experiences. So deeper learning it's learning to look at your own teaching with that lens, and the rationale is that it really strengthens everybody's content learning. And then lastly, the other focus area at the middle high school, once again, they've done a lot of work with math curriculum. It's going to continue with a lot of great work with illustrative math, starting in Math 6 up through pre-algebra, but they're also in Algebra 1, the 8th and 9th grade classes, adopting the Amplify curriculum, which is very similar to illustrative math and bridges. It's student-centered, it's inquiry-based, and it really helps students problem solve in math, work together, and it's not just the rote sort of doing problems over and over. They develop great number sense that allows them to be successful no matter where they go to apply their math sense. So I really applaud both schools and both principals that they've looked really hard with their faculty at the data, and they've come up with some great steps that weren't reactive. They actually were things that started and were planned by my predecessor, but when you look at the data as they have, it really makes a lot of sense. So, that's it.
I think there's a lot of information.
Thank you.
It's a lot, I know.
Indeed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone have any questions? Okay, let's switch to dark mode. That's interesting. Okay, so next we're going to discuss accountability data.
Which goes connected right to the MCAS. So it goes from MCAS to accountability. Hold on 1 second. So, as part of the Every Student Succeeds Act, I think 2015, 2016, it requires states to establish an accountability system. It's a federal law. So this accountability system was put in place, I believe, starting in 2017. And so I'll just go an overview of and the accountability system gives us a rating as a school district. So I'll take us through that. It's based primarily on MCAS scores, but there's other factors, so we'll go through all the other factors that go into our accountability rating. So what is it? The accountability system is a set of policies and practices that the state uses to measure and hold students and districts responsible for raising all student achievement. As we said, it's tied to the Every Student Succeeds Act. 2018 was the first year of this implementation. I always keep this slide in here when we talk about accountability. This is from Rob Kern, who's the Associate Commissioner for Accountability at DESE. And he said the accountability system is one piece of evidence. It's certainly not the only element that represents a quality school. So whenever you see him speak, and he's the data expert at DESE, he'll always say, we have to create this accountability system. The state's created it, we use it, but it's just one measurement and only one part of what defines a quality school. So what are the accountability levels? So in Massachusetts, these are the levels. 85% of schools in Massachusetts are one of the top 4 levels, which is schools meeting or exceeding targets. Schools with substantial progress towards meeting targets, which was our rating. So our rating was in that second category. Schools with moderate progress towards meeting targets. Schools with limited progress towards meeting targets. And those 85% of schools have a general overall rating of schools not requiring assistance or intervention. Then 15% of schools are put into a category of schools requiring assistance or intervention, and it can either be focused, targeted support, or broad comprehensive support. So Carver's district rating was a school with substantial progress towards meeting targets. I do want to point out to the committee that the middle high school had a rating of school requiring assistance, and we'll talk about that. The reason why is we did not meet the participation percentage. The requirement is that 95% of all students who are required to take the MCAS exam take it. Our 8th grade students, as we mentioned earlier, many of them chose not to take it. So that put us under the 95% threshold. So we had less than the 95% required of our students in grades 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 take the MCAS exam. So that put us into this category. The middle high school has not because of their scores or their ratings, it's solely based on participation, not mean the participation percentage. We don't know what that means yet. We've never had a school with that rating in the district. We've reached out to DESE, and in essence, they've said, we'll get back to you in terms of what that actually means for us. It may mean that we have to submit some sort of report of what are we going to do to increase student participation to get above the 95% threshold. That's not mentioned here because I really looked at this from a district perspective, but I do think it's important to make that note in terms of our participation.
Yeah, absolutely.
The eighth grade participation did not pull us under the district-wide, so district-wide we met the threshold of 95%. If we had not met that threshold as a district, then the district would be rated as a school requiring assistance or intervention. But that district-wide, we had more than 95% of our students take the MCAS exam because, as I said, in our other grade levels, it was very typical. Almost the majority, our percentage participation rate was probably 98, 99% of students took the exam. So this is just the same breakdown of what does it mean to get in those targets. So we're in this substantial progress towards targets, which what that means is this. We're going to talk about establishing targets. We met between 50 and 74% of our targets. So how you receive this rating is really based upon what percentage of your targets you meet as a school district. So what do they look at? Okay. And as John said earlier, it is interesting. They divide it into two. They divide this into two ways of looking at the accountability indicators. There's non-high schools. Now, I don't want to create confusion. Schools are rated individually. So the middle high school was rated as a middle high school because it's 6 through 12. So half of the middle high school used the non-high school standards, half the high school used the high school standards, if that makes sense, right? But the participation percentage is based on students who took it in grades 6 through 10, right? But for non-high schools, they look at achievement in the ELA, math, and science MCAS. They look at ELA growth and math growth. They don't have any of this high school completion, not applicable. Progress made by students towards attaining English language proficiency is a percentage, a part of the equation. And then the additional indicator, the only one they use for non-high schools, is chronic absenteeism. Which obviously we already said our chronic absenteeism was up. So we're not going to earn any of our points on the chronic absenteeism because we declined. We went in the wrong direction on chronic absenteeism at both the high school and non-high school level. High schools, they look at achievement, growth, then they look at high school completion rate, 4-year cohort graduation rate, extended engagement rate. What that means is, are you inviting kids back who, after 4 years, they haven't graduated? Do they stay in? Do they come for a 5th year? Do you have a student who drops out who might return and earn their diploma? And so it's really like a 5-year graduation rate. They're saying, hey, even if a student's not going to make it to graduation in 4 years, you're still engaging them. You're still keeping them involved in school. And that's what the extended engagement rate looks at. And then your annual dropout rate. Same progress made towards students attaining English proficiency. And then additional indicators, chronic absenteeism, and then this thing called percentage of 11th and 12th graders taking advanced coursework. And DESE actually has a defined list of advanced courses. And they actually just take a percentage. How many of your students take AP courses? We don't offer IB. IB is equivalent to AP that some schools offer instead of AP. Very few schools offer both AP and IB. Dual enrollment courses, Project Lead the Way courses, which we offer Project Lead the Way courses, or other selected rigorous courses, like a pre-cal course is considered rigorous math. So any student enrolled in pre-cal, we get credit for being involved in a rigorous course subject. So these are the areas that they look at. So it's a lot of MCAS, but there's some things beyond MCAS as well. And then the breakdown by percentage. So obviously, for non-high schools, they look, 67% of your rating is based on your MCAS achievement, 23% on growth, 10% on chronic absenteeism. At the high school level, 48% based on achievement, 22% based on growth, 20% for this high school completion piece. And I'm going to actually talk about that one a little bit because annual dropout rate's an interesting one in terms of what I see as one of the flaws in this system. And then 10% again for chronic absenteeism. Every year they establish targets. If you want to go onto the DESE website, if you're really interested in this, there's a real in-depth analysis of how they establish your targets, and they give you all the math behind it of how they come up with them. But basically they determine what reasonable growth looks like over a period of time for all districts. They use what they call the 25% growth model, and as I said, you can go on the DESE website and you can look at all the math that establishes that. And doing this, they establish one-year growth targets for all students in all subcategories. I do want to point this out. If you score in the top 10% in the state in any category, you'll earn a 3 or a 4. So they do have that caveat of if you don't have growth, if you go backwards, you can still get the full points that you can earn if you're in the top 10% in the state, if that makes sense. Because obviously some districts will say, hey, look, we're the top performer in the state, and our kids, we went from, I'll give you the extreme example, we had the highest scores in the state on our MCAS exams. And the next year we had the 3rd highest score. So technically they went down compared to the group before. On how the system's designed, you would actually get 0 points for that. And they want to put it a piece of, well, we have to recognize the people who are achieving really high consistently, they should earn their points even if they take a step back. So that's that whole concept. If you're in the top 10% in any category in the state, you automatically earn the 3 or 4 points even if you didn't grow.
That changed this year, right?
That's always been the case. That's always been the case. So what were some of our targets? I just wanted to give you some examples. Then I gave you what we scored and how many points we earned. You can earn from 0 to, these slides are in the wrong order. This slide should go first, so I'll go back to it. So if you go backwards, you get 0 points. If you're no change, so if your scores are about the same in any category, you earn 1 point. If you earn 2 points if you improved, but you didn't meet your target. So they established this target for you, you got better, but you didn't meet the target. You get 3 points if you meet the target. And then if you do really well and go well past the target they set, you earn 4 points. So this is just an example of what some of our targets were. So for all students in ELA grades 3 through 8, because that's how they categorize it, our target was to improve our scaled score by 2.1 points. Our scales actually improved. So our ELA, so when you look at the data was our ELA scores were actually for grades 3 through 8 were improved a little bit in terms of overall scaled score. They didn't meet our target. There was less than 2.1, so we improved below target, so we got 2 points. In math in 3 through 8, which really, our math scores, especially at the elementary school, were really our strength of our MCAS scores, we did meet our target. So our target was 2.3. We didn't exceed it, but we met it, and we earned 3 points. And then it breaks into subgroups. I won't read all of this to you, but your lowest performing subgroup, your high needs, your white, those are our identified subgroup. We don't have a lot of identified subgroups. If you don't have enough students to meet a population total, then you don't get a report out in that subgroup. I said that we did this slide in advance. So I do want to say to the community that this information is all publicly available. Where I'm going to bring you out to right now is what's on the DESE website, that anybody can go look at this and you can do as deep a dive as you want into our accountability rating. This is called the School and District Profiles from DESE. And you can go back all the way the years that they've had this system. And what they do is they do look at, I want to point out, they actually look at your scores over 2 years. So your overall accountability rating is not based on 1 year's scores, it's based on 2 years' scores. And the second year has a higher weight. So in 2024, we actually met 62% of our targets. So when you look at those target scores of 0 to 4, we met 62%, so it counts as a district. So that counts as 40% of our total score. This year we only met 46% of our targets. That counts as 60%, so our overall rating, 53%. So the state said, of our targets that are established, we met 53% of them. So we made substantial progress towards meeting our targets, and that's how we get that rating as a district. You can go, I'm not going to go detailed data for each indicator. I could, if we wanted to, if you really wanted to me, I could spend the next hour and a half. We could go pay detailed piece by detailed piece and go through it. We use this. I'll pick this one up because I just looked at it. We looked at non-high school MCAS scaled scores. So I'll highlight this one, right? And last year, our overall achievement was 490.0 on the scaled score. This year was 490.6. Test. Does anybody remember what our target was for ELA? You know, it's okay. It was 2.1. It was 2.1. It's 2.1. So our target was 2.1. So they said to meet our target, we would have had to have an overall scaled score of 492.1. So we improved. But we improved below target. We got 2 points. So you can actually look at this. You can go through this. Like I said, it's for every single category. They break all this data down. Everyone can look at it. I was just trying to give you an example of it. Yep. Going back to the overall. They give you this nice little overall sheet, which I think is a little bit easier to look at. And they list all your targets and how many points you earned. Okay? So the interesting part, like if we look at growth, we did well in growth. So our students, when you actually analyze our MCAS data, our performance may not have been where we want it to be, but our students grew, and we earned a lot of points in growth, both at the non-high school level and the high school level. Our high school performance was low. We did not meet our target. We declined. Now, you have to remember the other bad. So I always mention flaws in the system. This is comparing this year's 10th graders to the 10th graders for the year before. You're not comparing the same kids. So they establish a growth target, but it's not for the same kids. So those 10th graders, in terms of growth, actually met their target in ELA. And they improved from how they scored in 8th grade as individuals below the target because they earned 2 points. But in terms of how the 10th graders last year performed, they went down. So we got 0 points and 0 points. Does that make sense? The other one I think is, so I think that's a little bit of a problem because you're not comparing the same kids, right? The thing that compares the same kids is the growth. The growth compares the same kids. This is comparing different kids. Now, on the other side, we got points for over here comparing. In non-high school, we met some of our targets, met or grew, so we earned some of our points, right? The other one, this is a flaw in the system, annual dropout rate. And I focus on this one because we earned 0 points. Like, wow, that's terrible, our dropout rate. But we went from, so I actually tracked this data since the accountability system began, just to give you a sense. And I think this is a flaw in the system. So in 2017, our dropout rate was 0.7%, which was probably one student. 2018, it was 0.2, which I don't even know how it could be 0.2, but that's because that's like less than a student. But I'll have to figure that out. In those 2 years in the accountability system, we earned 4 points because it was really low, or the 0.2 was probably in the top 10% of the state, so we got the 4 points, right? Then they didn't do the accountability system for 3 years because of because of COVID. But our dropout rate was 0.5% during those years. Then 2022, we went up to 1.4% as a dropout rate, which was probably 3 kids, which is not good. We don't want to have 3 kids drop out. We went from one kid dropping out to 3 kids dropping out. So how many points did we earn that year? None. 0. We got a 0. But then last year, we went from 1.4 back down to 0.5, probably back down to 1 kid. So we earned all 4 points because we grew, we met our target. This year, we went to 1.1, which was probably maybe the difference between 1 to either 2 or 3 kids dropping out. But how many points do we get for that?
No.
0 because we went in the wrong direction and we're not in the top 10% in the state. But I just feel like that's a little bit of a flaw. Like I would not identify dropouts as a obviously I don't want to minimize. Certainly we don't want any students to drop out of school, and the dropout rate should be 0. But I would not identify that as a high leverage problem in the Carver Public Schools. And then I think we're going to have because our number is so small, you might see this thing pinball back and forth where we get 4 points, then we get 0 points, then we get 4 points, then we get 0 points.
Yeah.
So this happens to be a 0 year because our dropout rate went down, and it was not in the top 10%. Obviously, I told you we got 0 for chronic absenteeism because our chronic absenteeism went up and was not in the top 10% in the state. But our advanced coursework, we improved that, and that's actually an area we've been focusing on to try to improve overall. So they look at all these different things. As I said, people can go out. This is all publicly available data. You can go through and you can look at how we earned the points, what the targets were, whether we met our targets for each of these things. Again, just to highlight schools in the district, the middle high school was identified as requiring assistance. We mentioned that. But if you look at the school accountability percentage, it was actually 63. Sorry, yes, 63. So we only got that rating based on the participation. If our participation had been 95%, we would not have that rating, and the middle high school would be rated as a school not requiring assistance or intervention within the system because actually met 63% of its targets overall.
Yeah.
So that's where we are. So what are our takeaways? We're identified as a district not requiring assistance or intervention with substantial progress towards meeting targets. Certainly we're always looking to improve and strengthen our performance and growth by all students. Theme, which has been a theme for a couple of years, so it's something we have to improve on, is moving students out of partially to meeting and meeting to exceeding. And then we continue to need to focus on chronic absenteeism, both the elementary school and the middle high school. Keep increasing the kids taking advanced courses. So at the high school level, we want to be pushing those students to be taking AP, Project Lead the Way. We're actually looking at this year trying to increase our dual enrollment opportunities for students. So that's actually a focus and initiative that Mr. McGinnis and the guidance staff is taking on. And I think we'll actually probably have a presentation about that sometime in the next few months because we want to increase that. And then I put down dropout rate because certainly we want to see that go back down and see that help us grow overall. So any questions about the accountability system and how it's related to MCAS?
Anyone have any questions?
That was pretty thorough.
It was very thorough. I actually did go on and go through. I spent a lot of time going through our accountability report. And like you said, there is some information that can be skewed, right, or can be kind of tricky. So just want to reiterate to parents that it's important for children to take the MCAS exam. It's just a snapshot of where your student is learning. And obviously, it's important to come to school.
Yep.
So thank you for all of that information. We greatly appreciate it, and we know that there'll be a lot of hard work moving forward to move the numbers. Okay, so that brings us to, I can't even believe that I'm going to say FY27, but our FY27 capital plan.
It's that time of year.
It's just coming so fast and furiously.
I know it. In a couple of months we'll be doing budget and all of that. It's the time of year where usually the first couple of weeks of school we already sit the team down and say, okay, the schools are open and now it's time to look ahead to the next year. I think about, when we do work in the finance and in capital, it's more like geology where our scale of time is just different,
Yep.
So yeah, you've got in front of you first draft here for the FY27 through FY36 capital plan. That first page just gives you an overview, our mechanisms and our sort of plan model, our identical to what we've done in past years or pretty consistent with how it's presented. I won't go through it all with you because you all have seen it before, but I want to highlight just a couple quick things in an effort to frame the conversation for the evening. The first is that we structure our capital plan in like 3 buckets. Facilities and equipment, that first bucket, that's where we spend the majority of our time, a bit on transportation, and then a bit on technology, and so we organize it by 3 buckets. Everything that we do with our capital plan is tied to our educational blueprint. I know Mr. Neef has talked about that earlier in the year as well. There's a hyperlink to that as well if you're interested in sort of digging through, but as part of our sort of development process, we try to think about how does this work, how does this project tie to our vision, how does it tie to some of the priorities in the school district. And the last is that these sets of projects, this plan in general, is in large part supported by our community. And I think that Carver in particular is really fortunate. We've had an incredibly supportive community, incredibly supportive tax base to support a lot of the projects and investments in your school department. And that's not true in every school district and every community in the Commonwealth. And so, as we think about the framework to this conversation, I think the overarching sort of underpinning for it is that everything we do here and all of these projects are really supported by our community, and we try to find ways to offset some of those costs with outside resources. So you'll see some of those in each of these projects as well. Yeah. So the first component of the plan is facilities and equipment. Again, won't read it all to you, but I highlight a couple things as we frame the conversation. The majority of your facilities, your projects and proposals are going to be focused on the middle high school for obvious reasons. That's going to be your oldest building. And in particular, they're really focused on trying to support ways to innovate in that building, try to support ways to extend the useful life of the facility, and invest in our innovations pathways, which I think is really put Carver at the vanguard of some of the innovation in education in Massachusetts in general. That said, there are going to be proposals you start to see, especially in the out years for Carver Elementary School. We always talk about that school as the new school, but as we look at a 10-year, proposal here, one of the things that's important in a capital plan is that you start investing early in your facilities so that you never find them going into disrepair, right? That's really the goal. And lastly, certainly the smallest component of your capital plan, transportation depot, administrative building. But again, same idea, investments in those to try to maintain those facilities so they don't fall into disrepair. Yeah. There's your 10-year outlook. I won't dig into it too deeply. You can take a look at it at your leisure. I'll highlight 2 quick items for you. The first is that upper section where you start to see your trends at the middle high school. They start to fall off right around the mid-2030s, which again sounds like it's really far away, but we are geologic in our time scale here. The reason that sort of falls off there and we start to focus on broad maintenance, at a certain point in the early 2040s, late 2030s, the community is going to have a conversation about what you want to do with the facility. It's going to get to end of life, and that might be either sort of major renovation, new facility, long time away, but just want to pin that as that you start to see that starting to come up on your capital plan. The inverse is true with your elementary school. You don't see a lot of big projects in the elementary up until you get to those mid-2030s. Same idea. At that point, it's time to start investing in some of your major systems, mechanical, boilers, those sorts of things. Not super exciting stuff, but also super important to ensure that you maintain this investment that community has put so much into, right? More to come on that certainly in future years. So on our next page, we're going to start to dig into the FY27 proposals. We'll go through each of them. And again, at any point, if you have questions, certainly stop me. We can pose some questions as well. The first project is a continuation project. This is a multi-phase project. We're about halfway through it. We've called it Classroom Modernization and Pathways Planning. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You've got an aging building at the middle high school, and this is one of several projects that we've sort of implemented over the past few years to just help continue to, extend the useful life of the building, postpone any major repairs, and really just invest in the interior of that building because, one of the things that Mr. Neef says that resonates loudly with me, your kindergartners now will be graduating in that facility. And so you want it to be high quality, you want it to be innovative, and you want the things that they're using in that facility to be really 21st, 22nd century learning. Over the past several years, we've done a number of different departments. This upcoming year would be a combination of world language, which is a small department, and then some refurbishing with your theater program over on the stage, that top coat of that stage area. The next project proposal you have is part of the athletics program, also at the middle high school. If you've ever been in our weight room, that space has held a lot of different uses in that middle high school over the years. And the proposal here is to renovate that space. Again, you'll hear our theme at the middle high school. It's got good bones. We're not here to take down walls and put up walls. We keep the frame, but we take a moment in time to try to give kids some high quality new refresh on what we call FF&E, furnitures, fixtures, equipment, right? We've got some proposals already in. We're sort of taking a look at those and evaluating, but ultimately to help save some funding on this project, because they can get pretty expensive, our operations team will be doing most of the demo for this project if approved. So that can be expensive when you bring other companies into the mix. Our team can do a lot of that work in-house. And again, kudos to Mr. Siedentoff and his team to have that expertise. We're fortunate to have them in-house to do some of that work. But the goal there will be to have brand new equipment for our students and staff, new substrate, new flooring essentially for our kiddos as well. Again, the next one's not super exciting, but necessary. If you've been over to the central office building, that houses a number of things in your school department, not just your offices for superintendents, assistant superintendents, special education, business, etc., but also houses our special education program as well, our alternative program in the bottom floor. Ultimately, you're starting to see that exterior envelope is coming to end of life. The proposal here would be to actually remove that exterior envelope that you have currently, replace it with something that's just a little bit easier maintenance, a vinyl, material. It's also an opportunity in time to bring this facility in line with some of the other town facilities that you see. So in terms of the aesthetic, like your library, like this town hall, to create some consistency within the community as well. This next project over at the elementary school, the exterior, is a continuation, phase 2 of 2. If you remember last year, the community was kind enough to approve an appropriation to essentially move back the berm that's back in the play area. Gives our kiddos a lot more space, our staff a lot more space to, set up recess for those kiddos. That's the picture that you see there. The second phase part of that plan will be to install some new elements, some new play elements for the kiddos. Right now, the vision there is to do a combination of swing sets and then some vertical elements. Apparently, swing sets are in high demand at the elementary school. There's quite the queue to get onto swing sets. And so kids and staff and teachers, I think, are really excited to be able to do something like that there. This is your other elementary school project that was going to be in second phase, but we'd actually proposed to make a postponement on this project. Just to refresh, last year we got a partial appropriation to do this project. Essentially, those two sections that you see highlighted in green, circled in green from the aerial map of the facility, essentially show a walkway surrounded by a grass area. It's in high rotation for play area for kiddos. Both areas are certainly. And so by this time of year, you get 750 students sort of running on a very small grass area. The grass just can't keep up. Over the past several years, we've tried a number of different ways to keep grass on that space. Ultimately, if you step on a plant long enough, it just is not going to grow out of the ground. So we had proposed initially to do some artificial surfacing, which is just essentially green carpet with cork infill, natural infill versus rubber infill. We recently found an alternative material that we haven't used before, but that may actually be a better, less expensive process for us. But our proposal here would be to postpone it so we can try a pilot. We don't want to, go all in on a project if we don't have 100% confidence in the efficacy. We think it's going to work pretty well. So a small section, that upper left-hand corner, if you will, we're going to try this new material. It's essentially a rubber matting that is porous. It lets us throw down grass seed, lets the seed grow up through it, but protects the roots from trampling, ultimately. Again, we haven't tried it before, so our proposal for this year would be 0 with the hope that it's working, and if it is, come back to you in 28 with a proposal for the balance to do the rest of those two areas. This next proposal is a new one, focused in our elementary school. This is truly FF&E. I'll start with a caveat just to say you'll notice that this one's written more broadly than the language I typically write these in. That's intentional. We have a couple of kiddos at our school that have severe disabilities, are going to need some substantially new equipment to make sure they can access the building, be accessible to the building. It's intentionally written broadly because we want to make sure that we're considerate of their privacy as well. But ultimately, the equipment is a large set of accessibility equipment, everything from specialized classroom furniture to bathroom accessibility, adaptive learning equipment, mobility aids, some sort of medically fragile response equipment, evacuation equipment, all those things specific to kids of a certain size, right? I will say again, the school has some adaptive equipment already. It's just that the set of adaptive equipment we have is more broadly developed and maybe less specialized. The particular kiddos that we've got have some really specialized needs. Before I go on to transport, any questions on facilities and equipment? I'm going to drill down to anything in particular. Going on to transport, again, your executive summary at transportation, I'll just give you a couple of things for transport. As again, we've talked about this one before. 3 things I think are helpful to keep in the back of your mind. First, Carver owns and operates its own locally managed transportation program. That's atypical, but generally more cost-effective for communities. A number of communities are trying to move toward locally operated and managed programs. So we're fortunate that we have that here in Carver. Second is you see that middle section with the 3 bullets. Just gives you a sense of what your fleet looks like. You're getting close to about 40 vehicles. Over the past couple of years, the third item I'd share with you is that we've actually added on a number of 7D vehicles, essentially minivans with an upstart. So you've got like, if you've ever been on the highway and you see like a van or a car and it says school bus on it, there's a whole bunch of stuff we do as an upfit to that vehicle to make it qualified to transport kiddos with disabilities. Anyway, we've added a number of those to our fleet recently so that we can bring some of our routes in-house and stop paying sort of for-profit private companies to do that transportation. So that's primarily where you see a change over the past few years in the fleet. You can see the 10-year picture for your fleet there, and we'll drill into FY27, which is just one proposal. So your only proposal in FY27 is a single 71-passenger bus. A couple things to keep in your back of mind for our buses. We typically keep buses for about 10 years. That varies a little bit, but ultimately it's a combination of mileage and just New England winters, to be frank with you about it. If ultimately this is approved, there's quite a bit of lead time on buses at this point. We're still looking somewhere around 8 months for a lead time between, yes, the money is appropriated and a new vehicle arrives, right? So just to give you a sense of it, the bus that was approved last year will probably arrive in February of this year, right? So there is about a year lag behind this. That's crazy. Yeah. Last bucket is technology. Not a whole lot to share with the technology other than you see our 10-year, overview there. Oh, I do one important note. Actually, it's new this year. I'm sorry. So a little bit of context for our student devices, which we'll dive into in some detail, but it's helpful to see it here in the 10-year, overview. So during the pandemic, Carver was fortunate to win a pretty substantial grant that ultimately allowed us to refresh the entire fleet of student devices. For obvious reasons, those were necessary during the pandemic. But by doing so, those devices have, 5, 6, 7 year lifetime on them, and we've gotten up to that point now, right? So what you see there in your student devices over the next 3 years is essentially a refresh of your fleet of devices. That's midway down on your graphic, district-wide student devices, FY27, 28, 29. We do a couple of grades there over the next couple of years. Once you hit FY30, we'd then be able to do a cycle of essentially one new grade level of devices a year, and that would be able to cycle you out for the next several years, right? So we're essentially overcoming a bit of a glut that you had through the pandemic with devices for obvious reasons, virtual learning, remote learning, all of that. And the plan would be to sort of resolve that over the next 3 years. Which is, I That's the next slide there. I kind of said that there. Any questions on that one? That's probably the only sort of unique wrinkle that you see in technology this year.
Timing is everything.
Yeah. Again, it was wonderful to have the federal money. It just happened to come all at once, right? That's one of the challenges with that. Your technology over the middle high school is really just phase 2 of a 2-phase project that we started last year. It would essentially refresh our cycle for staff devices. Again, we've got a little bit longer lifespan on our staff devices. They're a little bit more powerful. They run a lot more of the behind-the-scenes software that the staff members are using to help students along the way. So we have a little bit longer life cycle on those. And then your last project is an infrastructure project. Again, not super exciting, but important nonetheless. I'll give you a little context for this as well. This will be 2 phases over FY27 and FY28. Essentially, this is going to be a refresh of your network switches and Wi-Fi access points. I'll give you the high-level view, but if you're really keen on learning more, I have some links there to give you a deep dive into networking switches and Wi-Fi points. But essentially, this is what connects all of the internet to all of our devices and does so safely, ultimately. Those switches are coming to end of life, and they really serve as like the backbone of all of your internet connectivity, which in today's education is sort of central to the work that we do. It's a big project, though, to move over all the switches, and you want to do so in a way that ensures you don't have outages for all the obvious reasons, right? So the goal here would be to replace your network switches and Wi-Fi points between 2 years, 27 and 28. And as part of this project, we would be applying for E-rate funding. Again, you've got a little link there to do the deep dive if you're curious about E-rate. At a high level, E-rate is essentially through the FCC. It's federal funding that allows school districts and libraries, as an aside, to access updates and support for their technology, to give kids and communities ultimately access to broadband and to the internet. What you see there is the proposal, so $75,000 for FY27, and the same is true of the FY28 proposal, would reflect only about half of the total cost, and that would be the local contribution for this project. The other half we'd expect would be covered by E-rate through the application process. So there's your 10,000-foot view. It shows you 10 years across all 3 buckets from FY27 to FY36 as an executive summary. I'll answer any questions that you might have about all things capital.
And the only thing I would say is tonight's presentation was informational. Obviously, get feedback from the committee. We're not looking for a vote tonight. And then, at some point, we realized that our total request this year is $823,175. And there may be a reality piece of that needs to get pared back.
Yep.
So the next part of our discussion in November will be maybe some prioritization around these items. So I guess we'll open up the questions on these items and then go from there.
Yeah, my concern is E-rate.
Yeah, I was gonna say that too.
Hopefully, hopefully it's not going to go away.
We did do some, I didn't write it in my presentation, I'll just say one second on it. We put some feelers out about E-rate. We know there's been talk at the federal level about reducing it, changing it. It's been part of several federal iterations already of the upcoming budget cycle. It's also one of the reasons of our urgency to get this project done is to get it in while E-rate is still funded at the levels that it's funded at versus sort of punting on this project for any more years. So we anticipate that it will still be funded at the levels that it will be funded at least through FY27. And to your point, we're uncertain of its future from there. It's a good point.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for all the detail.
For the modernization, I know they were doing that yearly. Is that number a quoted number?
It is not. So we built that actually, 5-6 years ago now. And to create equity amongst the departments, it's simply got an escalator tied to CPI. And so it's like an inflation escalator. So the proportional amount that the first department got, which I think was English 5 years ago now, is the same amount adjusted for inflation that world language would get.
I have a question about the siding. Is that for the entire building or just our portion of the building?
The
I know
school
it's kind of
department
a-
portion.
Yeah.
Of
Okay.
We are our own building, but yeah.
We're our own building. The building next door to us is separate.
Okay.
There's actually, it's only a
Like a
couple
little,
feet.
like a little bit of
There's
space
a
between,
lot,
right?
But those two
So, but I'm
buildings are
just
not
saying,
one
it's
building.
like, it's the whole, like
Yeah.
all four sides,
All
right?
four sides,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, it's definitely seen better days. Thank you very much for all of the detail. Look forward to seeing where things end up as we get closer to budget season, which I'm always in budget season at work, or forecasting, or something. Okay, so that brings us to October 1st enrollment data.
Okay, so typically we look at enrollment in two phases. So tonight's the first phase, where we just look at our enrollment numbers in comparison to the previous year. And then in November, we'll come back and we'll do kind of an analysis of where are the students who live in Carver attending school. And we'll kind of do that breakdown and see, we'll look at, because we have a responsibility to identify every student in Carver and where they attend. So that's a very detailed process that Gina goes through. That actually all school districts go through in terms of requesting, where students are. So we'll give that more detailed presentation in November. Tonight's just kind of the overview. So this was linked into your background. So our total enrollment is 1,462 students as of October 1st. And, October 1st is just the state's benchmark because they have to have a day, because your enrollment actually is always fluctuating and changing. So they just use a benchmark day of October 1st, so you do year-over-year comparisons. This is the number that sets our reimbursement through like Chapter 70 and all those types of things. That's the number that's used. So our enrollment is actually down 42 students, which is the largest drop we've had in a long time from last October 1st. The elementary enrollment is down 34 students, and the middle high school enrollment is down by 8. The reason why the elementary school is down by 34 is because we had a class of 129. We had a big class go to the middle high school. And why the middle high school is only down by 8 is because they only graduated a class last year of 95, but they brought in a class of 121, right? So they had a shift of 35 kids, which kind of offsets the loss to Old Colony. So the middle high school is actually more stable. The elementary, not that there's a problem here. I don't want to say the word problem. But if you look at the elementary enrollment, the driving factor there is we only enrolled 91 kindergarten students.
Yep.
And so they lost the class of 127, but brought in a class of 91. And if you look at the elementary enrollment, it's really inconsistent. Where we used to be fairly consistent. We used to have about 120 kids per class. But now it's 90, 123, 96, 128, 147, 97. So we have like these almost, it's really two buckets. But we have two really small classes. The first and third grade, kindergarten and second grade are 96 and 91 students. So 2 out of the last 3 years, with bringing in 5 kindergartners for school choice, our kindergarten enrollment has been around 90. If you take the 5 school choice kids out, we actually only had 86 Carver students enroll in kindergarten this year. Hopefully that's not the trend long term. If Carver has started to have a consistent enrollment of 100 kids or less than 100 kids at the kindergarten level. But I think that the demographics of the town, I think the town is getting older. And so our student population is dropping a little bit. Ultimately, that's the biggest factor in our student population decline is only bringing in, only having 90 kindergarten students enroll. And you can say, well, we graduated class 95, that should balance off. Well, 95 is more than 91. And then you're always going to have that natural attrition from 8th to 9th grade because students just have more educational choices. Students go to Old Colony. That's natural in private schools. And so you're always going to have that shift in 8th to 9th grade. So if you really look at our other grades from year to year, they're actually fairly steady. So the first grade went from 120 to 123. 99 to 96, 129 to 128, 146 to 147. You know, year to year, we're pretty stable. It's more the ins and the outs that has impacted our overall decline in enrollment. Though we do, I know this is an issue we've been concerned about because our enrollment had dropped and then it stabilized, and for about 3, 4, 5 years, we were actually fairly consistent in terms of being around between 1525 and 1575. But then last year we dropped from 526 to 504, so we had lost 22 students. And this year we went down to 1462. So hopefully we don't see that trend continue in terms of loss of enrollment. But if you look at our data, so we do an exit survey every year. I have the entire exit survey in your background. So you can look at the individual responses to that exit survey. We had 90 students leave the district. So the data represents 57 of the 90 students, or 63% completed the survey. So not everybody completed the survey. Most commonly, actually, we had 44 or 46 students leaving the middle high school complete the survey. And most of our students who are going to Old Colony completed the survey. So we did just put some graphic information of what reasons they said they were leaving. The highest reason, obviously, was attending a vocational school. Was the biggest reason for why students identified as leaving the district. The second largest was moving. Those two, year over year, are always the highest number of people moving out of town or students going to Old Colony. Other peers, athletics, we obviously see a decline down the roll here of why people selected. Some people can select multiple reasons, so they could select peers and voc. They could select athletics and moving. So these represent multiple responses. So they can't just, they're not focused, they have to choose only one thing. They can choose everything on the list if they want to as their reason for transferring. I will say that one thing that we've looked at through this exit data survey is, and we've talked about people who identified bullying as a concern, and that was actually down this year. So we had only 2 families specifically referencing bullying in the survey for their reason for leaving. We did have 9 families select peers, and that included the 2 students who said bullying. So there was a cross there. They put peers and they referenced bullying. But I know that that's something we've certainly been looking at. We're always encouraging people to identify or bring forward concerns about bullying. We've definitely put a push with that in terms of having the online bullying reporting form. And this year, in terms of the exit survey data, the reports of the reason for leaving being bullying were actually down. So that was good to see within that survey data. Obviously we'll crunch into these numbers a little bit more, but we have a little bit of a concerning trend in terms of declining enrollment, and that declining enrollment is primarily based on declining enrollment in kindergarten. So hopefully that's a trend that the district will not continue to see as we go forward. I don't know if there's any specific questions about the overall enrollment data. Like I said, in November, we'll dig into this in a little more depth.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to add? Or any questions? And we'll see where the OC project takes us in the future.
Yeah, so obviously if the Old Colony project goes forward, on that, right now on average, and I'll talk about this in more depth in November. I'll have the real numbers, so I shouldn't talk about it a lot now. But on average, we have between 23 and 25 students leave Old Colony.
Yep.
You can look over the last 25 years, and we consistently have between 90 and 100 students enrolled in Old Colony. I think actually a couple years ago was the lowest we'd had. It was like 78, which was really actually, that was an anomaly. We're typically between 90 and 100. And if the Old Colony project goes forward, that would be they would be looking to take more Carver students. So instead of taking 23 to 25 a year, they'd be looking to take 33 to 35 a year, most likely. So you'd be adding another 10 students who would have the ability to exit. And obviously when you start looking at a class of 90 that starts at 90 kids, and then they take 35. That would be concerning. So if you look at our kindergarten class that has 90 kids in it, that's the most extreme example because that's our smallest class. But class 2 years ahead of it only has 96 kids in it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when the Old Colony piece is going to start coming on, is when those grades get close to, well, Old Colony will be in place for a couple of years, but when the kindergartens get there, it'll be there for a little bit. But obviously that's something that the town's going to have to consider 10 years from now, when you start looking at some of this enrollment data.
Yeah, absolutely. And just remind me, how many school choice slots did we open up for kindergarten?
5.
5, right? And we filled all 5?
We filled all 5. So that's something we could consider this year.
Maybe we should consider when it's
opening
time.
more
about
slots.
Opening more slots. Not sure if the desire is there, but
Right.
something we should consider.
That's where we routinely fill our slots. I think last year, I'm looking at Gina because she looks at this data all the time. I think last year we only enrolled 4, but then we filled the 5th slot during the year. But almost every year we fill all 5 seats. And so we haven't had to do a lottery in a couple of years.
Yeah.
But there's definitely years where we've had to do a lottery where we've had 8, 10, 12 people apply for school choice. We've had to do the lottery. So yeah, I think that is something to consider. And then look at the demographics. We do look at, every year we actually request the live births from 5 years previous. So we have a sense of what the enrollment's going to be. So that's data that the town clerk provides to myself and Louis Maestas. So we'll do that again and see where that data is, and maybe I can bring that to the school committee too, as we're considering opening up more school choice slots.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else on enrollment right now? Like I said, we'll come back to again in our next meeting.
Anyone? Okay. That brings us to upcoming events.
I will look at the upcoming events list very quickly.
I remember the pumpkin parade. The pumpkin parade is so much fun.
So we do have parent conferences coming up in both buildings. Certainly you can always look to, if you haven't signed up, I think it's closed, but I'm sure you can get in and see people at the middle high school level, especially at the high school level, more so than the middle school level. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard. The teams often sell out. I don't know if that's the right phrase you want to use, but the 6th and 7th grade teams, it's a little bit harder. But definitely 9 through 12, if you want to go in and see a teacher, you should take advantage of that this Thursday, 12 to 2, 6 through 8. And then the elementary parent conferences are a couple weeks later in early November. So there's November 6th. So we do have some of the traditional events in the community. Trunk or Treat is this Friday. That is a traditional event that gets a big turnout at the elementary school. And also you mentioned the pumpkin parade to highlight all the kids' pumpkins at the elementary school. And then, when we get into November, we have the drama presentation. So we have the musical Shrek coming up on November 7th. And Veterans Day Assembly at the elementary school as we move into that Veterans Day weekend. As always, my focus here is there's always a lot of good things going on in the district. All these things are available on the school calendar. They're all advertised in the website and the weekly news. We encourage members of the community to come out and participate in all the great things that are happening in the Carver Public Schools. I know we have referenced this a little bit. November 18th is the vote on Old Colony. That's from 12 to 8 p.m. And we also right now tentatively have a joint meeting of the Select Board, Finance Committee, and School Committee planned for that night.
Yep.
So
Busy day.
busy day.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
All right, we'll turn it back to Ron for the financial update.
Yes. Very exciting.
Yeah, so we're at the end of the first financial quarter. Things got a little bit busy, both at the federal and state level. Give you some high, perspective look on this here. So we're middle of the federal shutdown, as I'm sure you know. A couple of lenses to look through as you think about impact in schools. The first is just regulatory. A lot of the work that we do that's tied to money, more often than not, requires sort of guidance with the feds. For the large majority of that, it's shut down right now. That said, from a financial perspective, money's generally flowing, so there's been no interruptions in federal appropriations to Carver Public Schools. You can see a breakdown of what each of those look like ultimately. One thing I will just flag is sort of that second bullet. The only group in the federal array of funding that has flagged some concern has been USDA. So the feds appropriate money to the states, who then takes that money and give to the school districts. They've got that through October, but then at that point, it's really unknown. A large majority of the funds that the state uses for universal meals ultimately comes from the feds. It's a little bit complicated in how that works, but the long and short of it is that money is federal money that gets siphoned into the states ultimately. So that's the one that we have our eye on the most in terms of potential financial impacts. What does that look like? No guidance yet from the feds, obviously, and the states sort of saying, hang in there, let's see if this thing can get resolved. Right? I have some drill down detail on what it looks like and how the layoffs are impacting different components of federal funding and education related regulation, but that's your high level picture there. The only other one I'd share with you is just some background on federal funding in general. I feel like a lot of folks right now are having these deep conversations around what federal funding looks like because of the shutdown. So I've got a little primer for you on just how the federal cycle works for budget. It works a little bit differently than the state cycle, and certainly different than our local as well, both in terms of the mechanics and the process and timeline too. So something to keep in the back of your mind as folks are talking about all things federal shutdown. On the state level, I feel like I'm just the harbinger of bad news here, but so state revenue collections are still lagging. We talked about this in the summer, early on in the fiscal year. Again, because it was early, there's sort of no need to jump to any conclusions. We're now at the end of the first fiscal quarter. September is an important benchmark for us. State's about 1.5% behind the benchmark. Again, it's not alarm bells at this point, but it's starting to paint a concerning projection for the rest of the fiscal year, and then thinking about FY27. You can dig into the financial report there for the state if you're interested as well. The next bullet at the state level from Beacon Hill is pretty wonky, but I just want to make you aware of it. So at a very high level, there's essentially an issue related to the new federal tax codes that came out. The way in which they are currently written is not the way the state understands them to be. That disconnect creates a potentially large deficit in what the state anticipates for federal funding. That's the gist of it. If you want to dive in, it's a little bit more complicated, but that's the high level of it. Why is that important? Just like us, we get a lot of federal money, the state does as well. The 15th of October was the day that the state was going to have some decisions about that. This was already written and published, but I was reading earlier today, the decision at this time is going to be wait and see from the state. So there was talk initially about should we dig into some 9C cuts. There's a provision in the law that allows the governor to make reductions in the total budget if they're concerned about the revenue. And they said, no, we're not going to do that thing. They call it 9C cuts based on the statute, right? So that was the big concern that people had, was like, oh my gosh, it's a pretty big chunk of money from the feds. What will the state do? Right now, they're taking a wait and see approach. Last thing I'll say on that, and sort of general about state funding and how that impacts us here in Carver. If you remember back when we were talking FY26 budget, the state took a pretty unprecedented stance around their rainy day fund. And they set aside close to just nearly $1 billion, about $850 million when it's all said and done. And they said, look, we're going to hold this as unearmarked because we're uncertain about the financial landscape at the federal level. At the time, they got a bunch of pushback, understandably so. That was an unprecedented number. But in the wake of these sorts of wrinkles that we're seeing here from the federal, flow of revenue, they have some of that money to lean on if, in fact, they need to. And I do think, this is me editorializing, I do think having some of that money is the reason they didn't pursue 9C cuts, or sort of cuts in general, right? Yep. Lastly, on the state level for school finance is the Chapter 70 study. Again, this is tied to the FY26 budget. As part of that budget bill, they included a mechanism to bring together a commission to take a look at Chapter 70 and how schools are funded and what the formula looks like. So that process has begun. You've got the announcement there from the Healy-Driscoll administration, and they've started to put together the study group to take a look at that. If you're interested in giving feedback on the formula, there's a mechanism on those hyperlinks to give feedback on the formula. our team at the state level, business managers have come together with some of the other associations and have started to craft some feedback, which we think will be helpful.
Excellent.
So excited to hear more about where that goes. Your next portion of your memo is just your grants. As Mr. Neef mentioned, you've got state appropriation here for Innovations Pathways Implementation Support. The grant is for $13,500. You can see there some of the components that grant would ultimately support. And we just request the school committee to vote to approve the funding. I don't know if you want to do that separate from warrants.
Yeah.
Yes, right, so we can do it one at a time.
Yep.
It's probably 3 votes we need.
Hmm.
We can do that
It's
one
3
out.
votes.
Someone wants to vote, make a motion to approve the grant.
Okay, I move to approve the acceptance of the $13,500 Innovations Pathway Implementation and Support Grant.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the state grant names are never concise. They have.
It's fine, it's just late. And it's been a long day.
The second item you've got here is just your warrants, ultimately. Beginning of quarter 2, so just your payroll and expenses warrant. And we do have some transfers for the end of quarter 1.
You want to approve the warrants?
Yeah,
All right.
that'd be great.
I move to approve the FY26 warrants as presented.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Right now, the transfers are not linked in.
I was going to say, I didn't see a link to the transfers.
Sheena, do you mind pulling
bring
them
them up?
over?
Thank you.
Should have caught that earlier.
It's a long agenda. It's 8:30.
As you're pulling up the file, I'll just maybe give you a quick highlight of it. As always, you have your entire budget, so you'll see in a moment your first quarter budget rolled up by accounts. The total budget's obviously your appropriation that you see on the warrant each year. And you can see the expenses, encumbrances, and balances to that point, with some just detailed background there.
All right, we got it up.
That's the first tab there. And the second one are just your transfers. It's quarter 1. There's not a ton of newness there, but I'll highlight 3 things that are important to keep in the back of your mind. The first, in quarter 1, one of the things we do is we reconcile all of your staffing, right? So your budget's built in the winter. Several months later, you get all of your staffing in, and what you see in FY26's first quarter is a lot of reconciliation for steps and lanes and new hires and all of that. Broad strokes, we're running a little bit over on that, but it's early in the year, so we sort of talk with our team internally and to pump the brakes on non-essential purchasing. That's usually helpful to help soften that impact. The other 2 that I want to bring to your attention, we made some adjustments locally to increase the amount of money that we're spending on our own grown transportation and reduce some of our contract services, so bringing the routes in-house, right? Spend less money on private organizations and transfer some of those funds to offset the cost for drivers and fuel and those sorts of things. And the other flag that I would share with you through the end of fiscal quarter 1, we've had substantial repairs that were needed, actually both buildings that are putting operations and maintenance into the red right now. So you'll see transfers at the very bottom, row 78 and 79. Unanticipated mechanical repairs that were necessary over at the elementary school. That's your HVAC units on the building roofs. And then over at the middle high school, we had some boiler repairs that were needed, both of which were higher than typical in any year. And so you see some substantial transfer there to sort of make those folks whole and then project out an updated budget for the remaining of the year. So overall, you're running a little bit hot right now for your budget. We're going to pump the brakes on all of our non-essential spending, and we'll keep you posted as we get to quarter 2.
Okay, thank you for that.
And I just want to ask if you would be
Yep.
kind enough to vote the transfers for
Sure.
us.
I move to approve the first quarter FY26 budget transfers.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you very much, Ron, as always, for all of the detailed information that you provide us with. And that brings us to the second reading of some policies.
A whole bunch of them.
Yep.
All right, so I'll take through one by one. Second reading of policy GBEBC, gifts and solicitations by staff. And actually, the next three policies are all related to the same concept.
Yes.
This policy is an update of our current policy that's recommended by MASC. It adds a section in regards to raffles and games and chances that basically they're not allowed to be sponsored by the schools. We reviewed this last time, so this is a second reading. So I would propose that we approve this updated policy.
I move to approve the revisions to policy GBEBC, gifts and solicitations by staff.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
So next one, policy JJE, student fundraising activities, the same concept of raffles and games. This is a policy update to a current policy that is recommended by the MASC. It adds a section that in regards to raffles and games of chance, saying they're not allowed to be sponsored by student groups, so student groups cannot have a raffle. This is the second reading of the policy, and I would recommend its approval.
I move to approve the revisions to, I move to approve the revisions to policy JJE, student fundraising activities.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And the second reading of policy KBE, relations with parent booster organizations. This is the same concept. This one says that parents and booster organizations can run raffles, but if they run a raffle, they have to follow all applicable state rules and guidelines related to running a raffle. This is an update to our current policy that's recommended by the MASC. It's the second reading of the policy, and I would recommend its approval.
I move to approve the revisions to policy KBE, relation with parent booster organizations.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The next two I grouped together because they're related. So second reading of policy KI, visitors to schools, and KIB, visitors to classrooms. If you remember from our last meeting, the new KIB, visitors to classrooms, was our old KI, visitors to schools. And I haven't changed, there's no changes to that policy. It's just being renamed and renumbered. Because MASC is recommending this new policy called KI, visitors to schools, which would outline, it really outlines recommendations around the process of someone coming to the school and what kind of screening they'd have to go through to enter the building. And saying that we'd have policies and procedures in place to ensure that people aren't entering the building without going through those procedures, which is something that occurs, it happens. We have those procedures set up in both buildings, and so it made sense to create the new KI, but I didn't want to eliminate the old KI because there are still occasionally parents who come and ask to visit a classroom specific to a specific education setting. Generally in special education is where that happens. We actually have, currently there is a parent who's asked to come in and visit an educational classroom in which we're following what's lined out in KIB. So my recommendation is that we approve both these policies, KI, visitors to schools, and KIB, visitors to classrooms.
I move to approve policy KI, visitors to schools.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. I move to approve new policy KIB, visitors to classrooms.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, second reading of policy ECAB, access to building and grounds. This would be a new policy for the district. It is recommended by MASC. It outlines when the community is able to access the school district's buildings and grounds. It specifically states that during the school day, access to school building and grounds is limited to students, staff, and those with a legitimate business at the school. This is the second reading of the policy, and I would recommend that the school committee approve it this evening.
I move to approve policy ECAB, access to building and grounds.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Second reading of policy EFBA, school food and nutrition, meal modification. This would also be a new policy for the district. We reviewed at our last meeting. This policy outlines that the district provides substitute school meals for students who need them based on disabilities or special dietary needs. This is our second reading of the policy, and I would recommend its approval.
I move to approve policy EFBA, school food and nutrition meal modification.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Second reading of policy KBG, Parent Advisory Councils. This is also a new policy for the district. It's also recommended by the MASC. This policy outlines the responsibility the district has to establish and support a special education advisory council and an English learner parent advisory council if we have over 100 EL students, which the district does not. We do have and support a SPED pack. We currently do not have an English language learners pack. This is the second reading of the policy, and I would recommend its approval.
I move to approve policy, oh, no, hold on, did I get the wrong one here? I'm moving.
KGB.
Yeah, sorry, I moved ahead on my agenda here. I move to approve policy KGB, Parent Advisory Councils.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And second reading of policy JFC, Carver Middle High School Pathways Exploration. This is a new policy for the district. It's actually required by DESE that we establish such a policy by November 1st. The policy outlines RCT pathway options, our policies and procedures regarding vocational schools' access to our students in middle school, and are required to maintain records related to our students learning about vocational opportunities. DESE is requiring that this policy is a result of them changing the admission policy for all vocational schools in the state. Vocational and technical schools now have to establish some type of lottery system for student admission. Old Colony, I still don't think they've finalized theirs, but they have a meeting upcoming. They've actually invited me to a breakfast where they're going to unveil their new admissions policy and what their lottery is going to look like to the regional superintendents who are involved in the program. So I would recommend that we approve this policy because we need to submit it to DESE by November 1st.
I move to approve policy JFC, Carver Middle High School Pathways Exploration.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I do have two new first reading policies, and I want to spend a little bit of time on the competency determination one. And I actually have a presentation to go along with this. I know it's late in the evening. I'll try to give a quick overview of competency determination. Do you want to take a break? No, we're good?
Does everyone want to take we can do like a quick bio break? We technically have to call a recess, correct?
Yeah. If you don't have to, we'll just have to know.
Thoughts?
We're good?
I mean,
Let's just go.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll go to bed.
All right.
Kelly's part of the policy subcommittee, so she has seen.
Kelly's
she has seen
both
this,
these policies.
so she will not be missing anything.
So with the removal of the MCAS exam as the determination of mastery for students to obtain a competency determination in 10th grade, DESE is requiring all students, DESE is requiring all school districts to pass a policy that defines competency determination at the local level. So I just want to give you a little bit, so policy is actually going to be required by DESE. It needs to be submitted by the middle of December. We'll do a first reading this evening, talk about it a little bit, bring it back in November for a second reading, and then submit it to DESE at that time. So I want to give you a little background and history on competency determination. This is actually from the Mass General Laws. Competency determination shall be based on the academic standards and curriculum frameworks for 10th graders in the areas of math, science, and technology, history and social science, and English, and shall present a determination that a particular student has demonstrated mastery of a common core of skills, competencies, and knowledge in these areas as measured by the assessment instrument described in this section. So I read the law to you. This was the law prior to the ballot initiative last November. And this law stated that they had to pass a test by an assessment instrument described in section 1 of the law, which is what we now come to know as the MCAS exam. So what happened in November? Okay, what did last year, what did people vote for? What they voted for was removing passing the 10th grade math, English, and MCAS and science MCAS exam as the demonstration of mastery to earn a competency determination. It did not eliminate the exam. It's just said that the MCAS exam is no longer the measure of mastery. So we gave 9th grade physics, and then 10th grade English and math. So what the state is saying is, well, the law still says you have to demonstrate mastery. So when people voted to eliminate the MCAS exam, what they really voted to eliminate, I was going to highlight it, sorry. They really voted to eliminate that the MCAS was the measure. But you still have to identify mastery to earn this thing called competency determination. That a student is competent in English, math, science, and social studies based on 10th grade standards. So DESE has said to the local school districts, and I myself, what did the MCAS, what did it not do? It did not end the requirement for students to take the MCAS exam. We've talked about that a bunch. It did not end the requirement that you have to have a competency determination. It just removed the MCAS as the measure of mastery. So DESE has put out guidance to schools and said a CD, a competency determination, has to have two parts. Number one, students have to pass courses aligned to the academic standards of the state curriculum frameworks in grade 10, which is 9th and 10th grade English, Algebra 1 and Geometry, one of the following, biology, physics, chemistry, or a technology engineering course. And starting with the class of 2027, they've actually updated to say U.S. history. Then the second part is you have to demonstrate mastery in each of those courses as defined by the local level. So the state is identifying the courses. We get to identify them as well in our policy, but really saying they have to be aligned with the 10th grade standards. And these are the courses that are aligned with the 10th grade standards. But you get to determine what's mastery. Well, kind of. So they said you get to determine, but there's three options. The final exam or the final assessment in those courses, a capstone or portfolio project, or an equivalent measure identified by the state. So by the end of December, we have to say, what's our mastery? What are we going to use for mastery? What's our competency determination? And that's basically what this policy outlines. So our new CD policy has to have the following pieces to it: identify coursework requirements, identify the measure of mastery for each course, identify considerations for students with disabilities, a description of instances where the district may use MCAS scores, and we're going to have that in there to say, like, the MCAS can be a fallback if they don't meet whatever other levels of mastery. Develop an appeals process, so if a student doesn't earn mastery, they can appeal and say, this is why I think I should be given a competency determination. And develop a review process for students who enter school after grade 10. You know, so we have students who transfer in as juniors and seniors. Actually, this year we've had a couple of juniors and seniors transfer in. So they're past the MCAS window. They didn't take these courses in our school. Maybe they didn't take final exams where they were. Maybe they came from out of state. So basically, eventually we're going to say our review process, which the state has accepted as a transcript review, you can look at their transcript and say, yes, they've passed the appropriate coursework to earn competency determination. So all these things are in the policy that's linked in your background. It actually follows the frame. The state developed a framework to develop the policy. Our policy follows the state framework. It identifies the courses, it identifies the measure of mastery, it identifies what we're going to do to support students with disabilities. It describes where we might use MCAS, which is in our policy that we could use MCAS. It defines the appeals process, and it develops a review process for students who enter after 10th grade. So what's our required coursework? English, two of the following: 9th grade literature, 10th grade American literature, HLA, which is a course for history, language, and the arts that 9th and 10th graders take that actually combines social studies and English. We have what's called a language-based history course in 9th and 10th grade. So we actually have to, in the policy, we have to actually list out the actual courses, the name of each course that qualifies. And they have to pass two of those. In math, it's pretty straightforward. It's Algebra 1 and Geometry. So students have to pass Algebra 1 and Geometry. Students can take Algebra 1 and, Students can take Algebra 1 in 8th grade. So the 8th grade Algebra 1 course counts as meeting that requirement. Science is the same. They got to pass one of the following: physics, biology, chemistry, or our actual course. We have a manufacturing engineering technology course. We have Intro to Met over the course of a year. So they could pass that course to meet the standard. And then starting with the class of 2027, which is our current juniors, they have to pass a U.S. History course, which would be U.S. History 1, U.S. History 2, or AP. So one of those, one science, both math courses, and 2 of the English classes. And then for right now, we're going to say our initial determination of mastery for each required course is pass the final exam, which is going to push a little lower for students. Hey, he's saying, hey, you have to pass the final. Because occasionally some students, sometimes there's a concern by teachers that some students, a small percentage, don't take this final very seriously, because even if they have a good grade, whatever they determine to be a good grade, let's say they have an 85 going into the final, and the final counts 10% or 5% in some places, they're like, well, I could get like a 20 on that final. I'm still going to get a 78 for the course or an 80 for the course. And so sometimes we've had students who've had not a lot of interest in their final exam, small percentage. So this would actually maybe boost those kids up a little bit of, hey, you got in 9th and 10th grade, you got to pass final exams, because that's your determination of mastery under this new CD. What if you fail the final? So you can say that. You can do a next level. You fail the final. You can say, okay, well, you failed the final, so you can do it in this way. Earn a passing grade 60% or higher for a course at the higher level of the same content. My example here is always Algebra 2. The state actually has defined mastery, or they're saying it's the student who passes successfully an Algebra 2 course should be able to score meeting expectations on the 10th grade MCAS. So at the time they take basically they're saying everyone in Algebra 2, because we have students in Algebra 2 in 10th grade, because they take Algebra 1 in 8th grade, Geometry in 9th grade, Algebra 2 in 10th grade, that all those students should meet expectations on their MCAS exam. So we're saying if you pass Algebra 2, that meets the standard. You've passed the next highest level course for mastery. Or you can earn a passing score on the MCAS exam. So you take the MCAS exam in 10th grade, like that's where we use the MCAS. You failed the final in Algebra 2, or in Geometry, but you scored meeting expectations or a passing score on the MCAS, so we're going to say that you've met the competency determination. So we can use it as an alternate. And then the last one we put as an alternate is satisfy the Carver graduation requirements in the same content area. So if you pass 4 years of English, we're going to say you've established mastery. If you pass, our graduation requires 4 years of math, or 3 years of science, or 3 years of social studies. Why? This is a little bit of a stopgap measure, because while this is happening, and the state's responding to the reality of we voted to eliminate the MCAS exam as the measure of mastery. But the law didn't change, so we still have to have a measure. So they're saying to schools, hey, you have to have a measure, it has to be in place now. While that work is going on, Governor Healy's established a statewide graduation council, which has been meeting and doing public sessions. It's been in the news a little bit.
It was on NPR this morning.
I don't know if people have heard about that in the news. Yep. So I feel like the thing we're doing this year is kind of a one-year thing. Yep. Because what's going to happen is the goal is this council is going to develop statewide graduation requirements. And they're going to release the report in the spring. So in the spring, there's going to be an announcement from the statewide graduation council that says, this is our recommendation of what the new statewide graduation requirements should be. And they're saying statewide, so every school would have to adopt them. And we're going to develop a roadmap, a transition process for you, because I think this is going to be a little bit more comprehensive. And I think I hope they're going to give school districts a year or two to actually comply with the new recommendations. So I do think in 2 years, or even next fall, I could be back here making a presentation saying, okay, here's the new statewide graduation requirements, and here's what we have to do over the next year or two to meet them, and what changes we're going to have to make. So I feel like this CD policy that I'm asking you to look at tonight and then vote on in November is really a stopgap measure. It's a placeholder until these recommendations come out. Now, eventually these recommendations will have to be codified. Like there'll have to probably be some legislation around them. I mean, I don't know how that will play out because ultimately the law right now, back to the beginning of the presentation, this is what the law currently reads, except it took out this highlighted part about the MCAS being mastery. So there'll have to be some legislation around this. But I feel like if the governor's put a lot of energy into this statewide graduation council, so I think there'll be some impetus to support the recommendations that come out of this in the legislature to adopt a new statewide standard for what it means to be a high school graduate. I don't want to go too far into guessing what that's going to be. The only thing I do think is this group has identified what they call the statewide vision of graduate. And this graphic over on the left is their representation of that. And I do think they're going to say, not that you have to create a portfolio to match this, but they're going to ask schools to identify a vision of the graduate, and that as part of the graduation requirements, students are going to have some sort of portfolio or assessment that says you've met your local vision of a graduate, which is something we've been working for. We've just identified as vision of graduate, so this is work we've been doing. We're ready for that transition. That just can't happen in a year. That needs a little more time to build up that process, to have kids start building their portfolios, to do that whole thing. So that's the only thing I'll highlight as I think will come. So I thought it was very interesting that they developed this concept for a statewide vision of a graduate. And I think they're going to defer back and say that you have to have some sort of assessment around your local vision of the graduate as part of this statewide graduation initiative. I know it's late. I know we just gave you a lot more information, but that's the summary of the competency determination that we're proposing. And I do think that I don't think this is going to create a lot of harm for our students. We did some analysis of how many students passed their final exam. It was actually a higher percentage than you would think. So in general, in the course, it was course to course, it varied, but it was 85 to low 90% of students pass the final. So they're going to meet the hurdle there. And then if they don't meet the hurdle there, they can meet it by passing the next course of the sequence like Algebra 2, which most students have to graduate. So I don't think the policy we're looking to approve here is going to be a block for anybody to reach graduation. I think it's going to meet the requirements of what the state's asking us to do, and kind of put us in a holding pattern until we get more information about the statewide graduation requirement. While I'm on this, I'll just go into the next one because they're related. The next policy is a first reading of our current graduation requirement, which all we're going to do is strike, because we're going to have this whole new policy. So we're just going to say, in accordance with the Department of Development, says students must earn a competency determination, period. And not say what a competency determination is, because that's what we do here, through completing classwork based on academic standards and state curriculum frameworks. We've changed that last year because we're going to have a whole policy that defines competency determination. So the current graduation policy would just say it would end at a period after competency determination, because we're going to create this new IKFE, which is the E after a policy is always like, here's the procedure to have that policy work. So we have a graduation policy that says you have to meet competency determination, and then we have this additional policy that's matched with it that defines what competency determination is. So that's my summary of the first reading of policy IKFE and IKF. These are first readings, no action required tonight, and I can bring them back in November, which I'm sure people will be excited about. Any questions on competency determination at this time?
Anyone have any questions? It'll be interesting to see where they land. Their draft is due to the governor December 1st.
For the statewide graduation council?
Yeah, I only know that because the president of MASC sits on that council.
Yeah.
So like they spent several hours
They put a lot.
debating
Yeah.
individual like EOCs,
Mhm.
hours and hours and hours and hours. So it's been an incredible amount of work for everyone that's on that council.
Yeah, that council is pretty wide spanning in terms of having representation from students and teachers and community members and parents and MASC, MASS. You know, they've brought all the right people together to look at that. So it will be interesting to see where we are a year from now with this.
100%. Thank you very much for that information. Look forward to seeing where we end up. Okay, so I apologize. I switched because I wanted to see what the latest update was on that I received. So, something went wrong. Yeah, something did go wrong. Sorry, my iPad was just, I don't know, having a moment for itself. Okay, so that brings us to, we have 2 field trips to discuss. Very exciting.
Yep, Europe 2028, because they always like to get 2 years ahead on that because it gives families 2 years to pay. So they'll start, if the school committee approves this, they'll start putting this out to the community to have parents begin to sign up for Italy in April of 2028.
Yeah, which is crazy. They're going to Venice, they're going to Florence, Cinque Terre, no idea what that is, in Milan.
Yeah.
I'm Sicilian, you think I'd know, but I have never been to Italy. I go to Milan, so very exciting.
And then you can bundle these together if you want. You can do them separately, you can bundle them. Senior trip to Florida, April 2027, same idea. They try to get that approved so they can start moving towards getting a price and getting a sense for kids. You know, need school committee approval to move forward and start doing those things because the first down payment, they get the kids signed up this year and they do a down payment before they leave for the year, for next year.
All right. It's crazy. I move that we approve the field trips to Europe 2028, Italy April 2028, and senior trip to Florida April 2027 as presented this evening.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that brings us to reports from the school committee. I put a link in there for everyone to see some of the resolutions. There are some that were about to expire, so the delegate assembly will decide whether or not they're going to continue to support those. I do not have a link to the current resolutions. It's not available yet, but as soon as I do, I will forward it to everyone. I know it's late, so I'll keep it brief. MASC designed a new pin, so they sent me pins for everybody. I don't know. So something that it's a pet project of mine. I wasn't involved in the design of it, but at least see MASC now on it, just like we will be getting here, those types of things. So as everyone knows, conference is coming up super quick. I can't believe how quickly it's going to be here. It's kind of crazy. Looking forward to it. And anyone have anything they'd like to report out? All right. Stay safe out there, everyone. Please do not pass school buses. There have been far too many passes lately that I've personally seen. Please do not pass a school bus. Anyway, if someone would like to make a motion to adjourn, that would be amazing.
I move that we adjourn.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, 9:02 p.m. We are adjourned.